increasing economic pressure on them. Bear in mind, the president and Secretary Bessent revoked that waiver that they had to sell oil earlier this week, right before he went to Turkey. So that is now going to put more pressure on them. And I really want to look at this regional piece, Maria. I want to look at a country like Oman, which has such upside potential. They're doing such a great job with internal reforms to their economy. They've got a great Vision 2040 going. A lot of companies should be interested in getting in there and investing in Oman. They can't do that until the security situation is taken care of. So I think everybody in the Gulf is saying, hey, we've got to get this wrapped up. Iran has to stop, holding everybody hostage. There's too much upside. There's too much money, quite frankly, to be made for all of them. And so I think you're going to see, as I said, the kind of the pressure from the neighbors, not just from the United States and Israel, start to grow on Iran. And that could have a very positive effect in wrapping this up.
All right, Victoria, we'll be watching. I know President Trump has tried every which way to end this diplomatically, but it is not to be. Victoria, good to see you this morning. Thank you. Victoria Coates joining us. Thank you, Ray, on that.
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and video downloads. So,
by U.S. forces on several locations in 5 Iranian provinces. Now, Qatari negotiators are reportedly in Iran to meet with Iranian officials in an attempt to create conditions for a new round of talks and to de-escalate the tension between the two sides. Now, this latest spate of attacks, of this latest round of de-escalation came after the United States carried out airstrikes that killed 14 people and injured 78 others, according to Iran's health ministry. Among the targeted locations, civilian and military locations, are airports, logistic networks, maritime surveillance assets, and also railway infrastructure in northern Iran. Now, Iranian officials say that these latest strikes increased the gap of mistrust between the two sides, especially after the latest statements by Donald Trump during the NATO summit in Turkey, when he rendered the MOU over unilaterally. Iranian officials say that the MOU between the two sides is not built on trust, but it's built rather on commitment for commitment. Now, another factor that has also increased the gap between the two sides and also the mistrust between the two sides is that Donald Trump just retreated in his word, as he had already promised not to carry out attacks against Iran during the funeral commemoration of the late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. But the latest spate of attacks happened at the very moment the Supreme Leader was being buried at the city of Mashhad. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
In Syria, authorities have arrested several people accused of being responsible for bomb attacks in Damascus. Syria's Interior Ministry released videos of simultaneous raids across the capital and nearby regions. The attack occurred when French President Emmanuel Macron was visiting Damascus. Authorities say they arrested all members of the group believed to be behind the attacks on Tuesday and affiliated to ISIL. One person was killed and 36 others wounded. Now, Israeli settlers have attacked a group of Palestinians, including a child, in the occupied West Bank. The settlers assaulted the Palestinians on their own land in the area of Masafa Yatta near Hebron. Red Crescent medical teams provided aid for those who were attacked. Israeli settlers regularly target.
Yes, enjoy your weekend. Manuel, John Hancock, Emily Rowland. Let's get a check on your equity markets. Almost 10 minutes into your trading day, and we are higher. We're not yet at a record. We need to get to 76.09, just above there, to hit another all-time high. It's this trade that keeps flipping. It is, I'll say this again, I said it all week, the check writers versus the check takers. Today it's the check writers that are moving higher. It is Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Amazon, so all these companies that need to spend a lot on memory. To the downside, it is the chip makers. It is Micron, Intel, Lam Research, Broadcom. Eli Lilly is up there too, that's declining. So we are getting ready to absorb all the supply from SK Hynix. So some pressure coming into that. So maybe a little bit of technicality in today's trade, less than fundamentals. Eli Lilly being down is dragging healthcare with it. Infotech, again, it's the semis. That means that we're moving lower. And communication services is at the top with some of those hyperscalers like Meta having a very good day. And energy moves higher as the price of oil also goes up to the upside. Coming up on our show, why S&P cut Oracle's credit rating to just one notch above junk. That's coming up. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
We should not deny that change is coming. And change is not coming just in data centers and AI. As a world, we are building infrastructure, we're building energy, we're doing energy transmission, we're building next-gen manufacturing, we're ramping defense, and we're doing this thing called AI and data. We will see the largest need for capital ever. And that's what we've seen so far.
Nationwide strategies are built to help you save time. So I can focus on my clients. Exactly. Nationwide's legacy planning tools help you guide high net worth clients through complex wealth transfer strategies. But look at this transfer. Smooth. And practicing. I see it.
Bill on this conversation, Stephen Cook of the Council on Foreign Relations writing, the president was insistent on a return to the status quo, and the Iranians were not willing to go along. There will be pressure on the White House to return to negotiations. Stephen joins us now for more. Stephen, welcome back to the program. The president's own words, let's just finish the job. What does finishing the job mean at this point?
Well, it's unclear what finish the job actually means and how they would accomplish that. Finishing the job would essentially mean forcing the collapse of the Iranian regime, which I think the president has come to the determination is not really feasible. So this seems like bombast, trying to shape the behavior of the Iranians at the negotiating table. I'll point out that American strikes have gone further than they have before, hitting some infrastructure as a warning to the Iranians that should they continue to fire on shipping along that U.S. naval declared safe zone in the Strait, they'll pay a heavier price. I think this is all about negotiations. I don't think the president is returning to full-on combat with the Iranians, who refused to capitulate during the most intense phases of Operation Epic Fury.
Stephen, how do you get negotiation between two parties who profoundly do not trust each other?
Yeah, this is a real problem, and this is essentially a negotiation about the Strait of Hormuz, and I think the Iranians have made it clear that in the language of the MOU talks about arrangements for transit through the Strait of Hormuz, and they see that as their administration of it. It's a geographic power that they've discovered as a result of this conflict, and they're not willing to give it up, which is why they're firing on ships that are being guided through the southern route of the Strait. The United States wants to return to something more akin to the status quo that existed on February 27th. There is huge differences between Iran and the United States on this issue. It's not quite clear to me what these technical committees are talking about, given this gulf between Iran and the United States on the Strait.
From Marcus' perspective, they're not exactly looking for some sort of wholesale, long-standing solution. They're just watching how many ships are transporting through the Strait of Hormuz. Is there enough of a U.S. presence and potentially even allies participating in that to protect a certain critical mass of tankers getting through the Strait of Hormuz without getting attacked by Iran, even if there is no agreement?
I think that the most realistic outcome here is kind of what you see is what you get. I think the U.S. Navy is going to be involved in providing guidance through this southern route, with the Iranians periodically firing on ships to make a point and try to establish their control over the strait. This is something that could go on for quite some time. As you pointed out, there's a huge differences between these two governments, and this may be the status quo. Let's look back to the 1980s and the tanker war. We lived with this for quite some time. So we may yet again be involved in a prolonged operation to ensure the free flow of energy resources out of the region. And it will mean a more consistent American investment in the region than the president even signaled not long after he signed the MOU.
Steve, this goes against the theory that we had a number of months ago. It came out of the Treasury, and it certainly wasn't original, but it was called Operation Economic Fury. That you put so much pressure on the Iranian economy that ultimately they'd have to change their approach to negotiations. Any sign of a change of approach?
No, the president did revoke the license of the Iranians to sell oil, which will have an impact on the Iranian economy. But what has been striking about this entire episode is that the Iranians are neither willing to capitulate on the battlefield nor the negotiating table under very significant economic pressure. This demonstrates what analysts have been saying for a long time. The regime remains intact and willing to apply a lot of pain on the Iranian people to ensure its survival. So Operation Economic Fury has not yielded any greater results than Operation Epic Fury.
Is there a vulnerability, Stephen, that they need to look at? They've looked at economic pressure, it's not worked. Military pressure, overwhelmingly, the American military is superior in a number of ways. That's not worked either. What would work?
Well, what would work would be the Iranian people rising up and bringing down this regime itself. That's what the United States and Israel tried to do to create an environment in which that would happen. But that underestimated the capacity of the regime and its ideological cadres to hang on. We don't know what will happen 6, 8, 10, 12 months from now. There was a significant time lag between the operations against Iran in the summer of 2025 and major protests that shook the regime in December and January. But we have very, very little insight right now as to what is happening inside Iranian society. We know times are tough for the Iranian people, but there's been no sign so far that they are coming out to the streets and demanding an end to the regime.
Stephen, earlier in the conflict, there was some discussion around the U.S. running out of munitions, and that was part of the pressure to relieve maybe some of the most serious bombing efforts. Do we have a latest update on that? Do we have a sense of where that is?
Yeah, I've seen some data on this, and that we have run down by almost 2/3 some of these munitions that we had built up over the years. And that is likely one of the reasons why the president has said, we're going to hit them hard, and then says they're begging for negotiations to signal that he remains committed to a diplomatic solution to this problem. The munitions issue is a big one, and it is a very significant discussion here in Washington about the evolution of warfare and how these exquisite weapons that take lots of time and lots of money to build may not be appropriate in the age of drones and AI.
Steve, it's good to see you. Stephen Cook there at the Council on Foreign Relations. To Steve's point, the asymmetric nature of a lot of this.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All these videos are for free, and I'm going to tell you how to trade the market. I am shorting natural gas and longing S&P 500 today. I've been doing multiple trades in pre-market session. Right now, the market has opened up, and it's been opened up for the cash market a little bit more than 15 minutes now. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,554. I have a long year-end target of 7,800 to 8,000. VIX is below 16, so volatility is low. We're doing pretty well. Things are just kind of humming along. The dollar is stable. The euro's at 114. The Japanese yen has strengthened a little bit. It's at 161.75, and Bitcoin is at 64,700. Oil is trading at 71.71. So it's above that 68.78 support level. The next resistance level, per the Fibonacci sequence that I've been talking about for ages here, that resistance level will be at 78. So you have a 68 and a 78 fib sequence range. Inside that, there should be a trading range between about 68 to about 72 for oil. Now, natural gas is trading at 2.919. We've been covering this. We were looking at it when it was at 3.2. I said it was going to go down. If you paid attention to me, you would have made some money. All right. Actually, you would have made a lot of money. So it's continuing to go down. It's at 2.911. We're in the summer season. It should continue to go down. Probably the next trading range is around 2.6 for the low bound and around probably 2.93. Before it was around 2.9 to about 3.3. Now we're going to have a new trading range because we broke that support level of 3. We're probably going to have a new trading range at about 2.9 to about 2.6. But you have to be really careful with this. It can move really fast in a different direction. So you have to watch. But overall, it's going to trend down for the summer. There are two headwinds, the war in Iran and what's happening with El Nino with these higher temperatures across the United States, which will lead to more usage of air conditioners, which would burn more natural gas. So you have to pay attention to the weather and what's happening in Iran. But the natural trend down for natural gas right now is happening. And if you just do some risk management, you can make some money. So that's my 2 cents. Long the S&P 500 right now and short natural gas. Please help support the work that I do because I do all these videos for free. Share the links, ask your social media to follow me, and purchase the great products that I offer. Go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you follow my lead, you're going to make money and you're also going to get healthy. Magnesium and zinc, this will boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with your skin, your immune system, and brain function. Take them together for max benefit. Really important to improve that brain function. And another thing that will help with your overall health are probiotics. I have very high quality probiotics, either in the veggie cap form or in the powdered form, whichever way you want to take it, doesn't matter. But take it every day. And when you do that, your immune system at the gut level will improve. You'll have higher concentrations of IgA, your mucosal layer will improve, your gut biome will improve, the inflammation at the gut will go down, you'll reduce your chances of getting out, triggering or getting food allergies. You're going to reduce leaky gut syndrome. You're going to be able to sleep better. Your skin will improve. And a lot of people don't realize your metabolism will get better and brain function will get better by just improving your gut biome. Also drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods because processed foods and poor water quality causes a gut biome issue. So you want to reverse that. That means you have to improve the food that you eat. So please go to my store, get the probiotics either in the veggie cap form or the powder form. Use discount 5.
Discount or whether it should trade in par with it, but I would say that these ETF issuers, they would love to have their these single stock ETFs trading today, but the SEC is just not going to allow that. So we're not going to see these levered versions of SK Hynix here in the US likely until Monday.
Has the SEC been pushing back at all, James, against some of these leverage ETFs, especially considering some of the risks that you just outlined?
Let me just explain what is going on here. The S&P, not the S&P, the natural gas is now at 2.901. It dropped down to 2.898 and came back up. It is only less than 30 minutes, and I made a ton of money. All right, like, all you got to do is listen to me. Just listen. Shit. And the S&P 500 is starting to trend upward. It's at 7,556. So if you go into a decent leveraged, like a 2x leveraged ETF, or a non-leveraged, if you don't want to take the risk, like SPY, to trade the equity market, it's going to go up. So right now, what's happening in the news, everything in energy is going down, not up.
Much bigger here in the United States, but just per capita wise or what have you, is there a way to see if retail is way over invested in these things when they're not in the stocks?
Yeah, so I would say there's no indications that retail is like super over invested. Actually, a lot of the information where you look at this, I talk about how much trading is happening. What you want to see is you want to see a lot of trading these things. The worst thing I would say for these is that there's a lot of assets that come here and there isn't a lot of trading, because that means people aren't using them the way that they're intended to be used. They are trading vehicles. You see a lot of money pouring in as these things do well, and a lot of money coming out as these things do well, a lot of money pouring in as they go down. Basically, people are taking profits, trying to call bottoms. So for the most part, there's some like a level of like intelligence in the people that are using these things. So it's been kind of healthy, but obviously it's if you look at Korea, they are like outsized in their ownership. But here in the U.S., we have about $200 billion in these levered ETFs. If you account for notional exposure, the leverage that's embedded in them, it's over $500 billion, so it's huge. But for the most part, the biggest ones are in the biggest names.
All right, James, thank you so much for joining us. James Safart from Bloomberg Intelligence. ETF IQ, wow, every Monday, 12 p.m. New York time.
All right, so the natural gas is trading at 2.897. I closed out my position, all right? Going into the weekend, I am now cleared and I can take advantage of what happens when Monday comes around. Now, trading and investing are two different things. Investing is holding it for the long term, so it's more passive, right? But that's investing. Trading is more like tactical. You can be in a trade for 4 days. You can be in a trade for 2 seconds. Yeah. So, but it's going to continue to trend down. It's going to continue to trend down. But the question is how much more will it go? Now, if you take a look at a 2-year chart of natural gas, it usually trends down during July and into August, and then starts to trend up. So just be careful. But again, the headwinds this year, El Nino and what's going on in the Middle East. And Trump has a tendency to do something when the markets are closed and it's on the weekend. So just be careful, all right? But right now, I have a tactical long position in the S&P 500 right now. And a very, very small hedge position for natural gas, just in case something happens and it starts to creep up. But very small. Okay, with that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the allergy season. You need things that will help to neutralize allergens. Take the Manuka honey or the orange splash structural nanosilver lozenges that help to neutralize and help to protect that oral pharynx. Super important so you don't get problems with allergens. And if it's during the cold season, you're mitigating the problem. And if you're cleaning around your house, the basement, the garage, working in the yard, whatever, make sure you take some of these lozenges because you're going to neutralize just in case you're exposed to something. Super important. It's made from structural nanosilver. Make sure you get a few bags for your household. Use discount 5. You get $5 off. I want you to save some money because prices are too expensive because the Federal Reserve doesn't know how to manage the money supply. But I want you to get healthy. And so if you follow my lead, you'll get healthy. These are products that I use all the time. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, this is about Mitch McConnell.
CNN obtained video of emergency responders taking Senator Mitch McConnell to an ambulance. The neighbor who shot the video told CNN the Capitol Police blocked the street and other neighbors reported seeing McConnell's face. This was a month ago, and it comes nearly a month after a spokesperson for McConnell first reported that the senator has been hospitalized, but few other details have been released. Let's get to Andy Greer, who helped break this story. So talk to us about this video and how it fills in the pieces of the puzzle.
So John, what I heard from a neighbor of McConnell's around 8:30 in the morning on June 14th, this neighbor opened their door to commotion on the street. They saw 2 ambulances, a fire truck, and Capitol Police had blocked off the entire road. So this neighbor stayed on the street to try and figure out what was going on. And about half an hour later, at around 9 o'clock in the morning, this neighbor saw a person from McConnell's home being carried on a stretcher into an ambulance and said that they saw this person was wrapped in a blanket and that their feet was exposed, and that another neighbor standing next to them identified McConnell's face and saw that McConnell wasn't wearing an oxygen mask. So the firsthand witness that I spoke to said that they tried to ask Capitol Police what was going on, and all they were told was it was a medical emergency. They wouldn't confirm who it was for. And these new details come as we know very little about Senator McConnell's condition, why he was brought to the hospital on June 14th, and why he remains there.
Joining us right now is emergency physician, Dean of the Yale School of Public Health, Dr. Megan Ranney. It's great to see you, Dr. Ranney. Clearly, Mitch McConnell is not your patient. So having said that, the neighbor sees that he's taken out on a stretcher. There's EMS audio of emergency responders being called to the home for an unconscious person for cardiac arrest. Someone is heard saying CPR in progress. How serious is this case if this comes into your hospital?
It's difficult to reconcile the video that you've just shown with the story that we heard earlier about there being CPR in progress. So let's start from the beginning. You get a call to EMS about someone being unconscious. We send an ambulance crew out to assess. The causes of unconsciousness are myriad, ranging from seizures, which I and others have speculated that Senator McConnell may be having based off of those episodes where he freezes on camera. Could be that. It could be that he fell and hit his head. It could be a cardiac arrest with your heart stopping. So if you get the call, the ambulance, the EMS specialists go. When they arrive at the house, they assess the patient. They say, do they have a pulse? Are they breathing? Are they talking? That's the point, it sounds like, where someone reported that CPR was in progress. Now, that CPR could have been initiated by the ambulance folks, by the paramedics or medics, or it could have been initiated by someone in the house. And for viewers, knowing CPR is great, but just because you initiate CPR as an untrained professional doesn't mean someone had a heart attack. Okay, that's as much as we've known up until now, is that there was CPR in progress and the ambulance did respond. Now you have this video. The thing that struck me about the video, Kate, is that nobody seems to be in a rush. If there really had been CPR in progress, if Senator McConnell had truly been in a cardiac arrest, you would expect that they would be rushing, not taking their time, loading the patient into the ambulance. So that's the big additional piece of information that I think we got today. Beyond that, it is largely speculative, and I think we're all wishing Senator McConnell the best.
Absolutely. And as you're kind of noting, Senator McConnell obviously has been in public life for decades, and he has had a lot of health issues in the past. We know that he had polio as a child. He's been hospitalized for falling in recent years. He has had those episodes of freezing up in public that you're noting. He spent a week in the hospital this year. His office said it was for flu-like symptoms. He's 84 years old. If you have a patient with a profile like this, what questions, concerns do you have at this point?
Well, to me, one of the biggest questions is around the fact that he's been in the hospital for 3 weeks. For an average person, for you, for me, for viewers or their parents, A 3-week stay in the hospital means that you're pretty seriously ill. We try to get folks out of the hospital pretty quickly these days. Now, that may be a little bit different for Senator McConnell, given that he is a VIP, but it makes me concerned that he did have some time in critical care or has some elements of his stay that are requiring continued hospitalization rather than home care. And then on top of it, I would want to make sure that all of his systems are working as best as they can. His mind, his heart, his lungs. As you noted, he did have polio as a child. It's one of the reasons why he's been such an active advocate appropriately for childhood vaccination. But that can have.
Senator Mitch McConnell's office, well, please, the Senate staff, everyone else in the Senate staff is really where
but I just think the notion that because there's not a major piece of
fighting legislation,
fighting legislation that's priority to Republicans, that somehow the residents of the state of Kentucky are entitled to know, number one, what the health status is of one of the most senior senators in the United States, and two, the fact that there isn't an election somehow obviates the senator from one, transparency, or two, doing his job.
It's probably a trust issue too, because I think during when McConnell was a leader, he was someone who manipulated the calendar a lot. Somebody who would delay votes for this reason or that reason. Most famously, when it came to the Supreme.
I did not like Mitch McConnell at all. Now, I'm sure he probably has some sort of cardiovascular, maybe even mental function issue. Stroke, seizures, something like that. Probably seizures. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin B complex. The vitamin B complex is super important to take because it'll help to rev up your metabolism so you're controlling your weight, your energy levels. When you get older, your metabolism starts to go down. So you want to target that. So you can improve that cellular metabolism by taking the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex will also protect your neurons because it has vitamin B12. And the first 4 B vitamins in this complex will help to boost up your mitochondria. So you'll have more ATP. They work directly with the electron transport chain to build more ATP, which is the major energy source that your cells and tissues need. So when you're improving those tissues, they're going to perform better, including your neurons. So if you're 40 years of age or older, make sure you get the vitamin B complex. And since we're talking about cardiovascular health, omega-3 is super important. Why? It brings down systemic inflammation and controls your lipid profile. It helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. Therefore, you're reducing plaque formation. You'll have better cardiovascular health. Your vascular system will improve. You will have better blood flow to your hippocampus so your brain doesn't atrophy. And omega-3 helps to reduce this over stickiness of your red blood cells so you don't overclot. Especially when you get older, that's a problem. And maybe that's what happened with McConnell. We don't know because they don't tell the public what's going on. But it's all about you. You need to take control of your own health because no one else out there will. Not your physician, not your congressman or senator, only you. So please go to my store, get the omega-3, and take it every day. Please go to my store, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, save some money, get healthy, listen to my show all the time and make some money. It's really simple. Don't be a slave to the system.
Available in my size, so I
There's a lot where a lot of the young women here were doing it.
Yes.
It seems the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, but then when you can't get what you want, it's not worth it.
Exactly. And it's tough to actually surf through their website to find things that you actually want as well.
Right. After a while, you're just thinking, whatever's in my size, just send it to me, please. And that's probably not what you were thinking when you first signed up for the service. All right. Thank you so much, Alan Parnell. She is our equities reporter here at Bloomberg. And of course, for more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to our Stock Movers Reports, where we offer 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the
the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, natural gas is trading down at 2.878 now, so it's dropped a lot. So it's getting like, the velocity of the fall is now, you have to be careful. It can continue to fall, but it may start to peter out, maybe retrace a little bit. This is the reason why I do a little bit of risk management. I know that the overall trend's probably going to go to 2.6 over time. The probability of it. This is all about probability. No one knows for sure about anything, but it's all about probability. So there's probably a 65% chance that it gets to 2.6. There's a 35% chance that it goes back to 3.0. Okay, so it's all about probabilities. But it's also the speed of the change, the velocity of the change, and the acceleration of the change. So price movements there can be the velocity of the price, but also the acceleration of the price. And when you have acceleration of a price move, it will start to decelerate, right? And then start to plateau and then maybe retrace. And that's what I'm thinking might be happening at the 2,850 range. Okay, with that, let's listen to John Bolton about Trump, because he has nothing better to say about anything but to complain about Trump. And I really believe that the deep state that no one can find is literally in his mustache.
Where do we go from here, Mr. Bolton?
Well, I think the clear outcome of this discussion is that the ceasefire is very much in jeopardy, and it's very hard to predict what's going to happen next.
And that means at this point, however, when the president says the ceasefire, as far as he's concerned, is over, it means a return to hostilities over the next 24 hours? Is this a warning shot or perhaps a declaration that hostilities are back on? How do you read it?
It's impossible to read what Trump means. He did say at one point that he was giving advance warning that Iran would be hit very hard tonight. I mean, that could mean going after a few selected targets. The fact is, the Iranians are counting on Trump not to launch a general warfare again because he's worried about the upcoming November elections.
Okay, but at this point, it seems to me there are two tracks here. One is the Strait of Hormuz. He's disappointed that there are what seems to be minor strikes on vessels, so he cannot get the oil out. And then there's a question of the nuclear weapon, and he said that still stands. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. So ultimately, how is the president going to ensure that that happens?
Well, personally, I don't think there is any way to ensure they don't get nuclear weapons until you change the regime. That has been the problem for the last 40 years as Iran has pursued nuclear weapons. I think the issue with the Gulf is more serious because while Iran was shipping its oil out, the Gulf Arabs were not. And now that the president has put the sanctions back on Iran, which is significant, oil prices have gone up 5% today in the spot market. So they're reacting very quickly to news that indeed hostilities might begin again.
All right, he was interviewed yesterday. All right, but the bottom line is, hindsight's always 2020. Today, oil is trading at 71.81. Now, it's really dangerous to be playing the oil market at the moment here, because you don't know. Trump can open up his mouth and oil can go up $4 or $5, or it can go down $2 or $3. So it's really dangerous if you go into the market and don't have some sort of hedge strategy. But professional traders are saying that it's very difficult to manage a properly risk managed trade in oil futures right now. All right. So be careful. This is the reason why I'm telling everyone, take a look at the natural gas. It's a little less crazy, right? It's a little bit more trending to its normal trends of seasonal trends, let's put it that way. Now, what is interesting, during the crisis, we were seeing a negatively correlated trading pattern between natural gas and oil. Oil would go up, natural gas would go down. If oil was going down, natural gas would go up. Right now, we have positively correlation. Now, when it comes to trading different assets, there are these periods of time where there's an oscillation and a changing of those correlations. This is the reason why when people have a diversified portfolio, sometimes that diversification doesn't work, because diversification, by definition, means stable correlations, either negatively or positive, depending on what you want to do. So the point that I'm making here is that something is changing. The system is changing. This is the reason why all those people that are just stuck with the fundamentals, they don't get it. They'll never get it. Complex systems emerge with certain behaviors, micro behaviors and macro behaviors. And this is the reason why behavioral finance always trumps fundamental, always. So with that, just pay attention. The oil market is trending down, but Trump could, and there's relatively good probability, more than 60% chance, that we're going to do further strikes in the region. And there's going to be a retaliation. So oil is probably going to trend down to maybe 68, and then all of a sudden it'll pop back up to 75. So this is the reason why you got to be careful with oil. Trading it is not easy. It's not easy. But as I was explaining what was going on from the day that the war started and the trading pattern, I kept on shorting. All right. At first, I had what is called a straddle position for hedging, and then I made money on the uptick, and then I closed it, and then I kept on shorting as it kept on climbing. All right, and that's dangerous to do, what I did, but I just kept on shorting it as it kept on climbing up to 120, and then it started going down, right? And I kept on shorting, and then I was able to make profit. But you gotta be able, one, to understand the dynamic, and two, to be able to take the risk. Just imagine what I just went through. Think about it. Think about what I just said, and roll back the clock. And I've been recording everything I've been doing. And at that time, when it kept on going up, I kept on shorting, waiting. But it was like, stomach pains all the time, because Trump would open up his mouth and $10 moves in oil. And because it's when you do leverage positions, you have volatility decay. So, what I went through was difficult, and a lot of professional traders were doing what I was doing. So when people kept on saying, "Oh, it's so easy to make money," no, it's not. If you really are doing this properly, it wasn't, because of the mouth of Trump. So be careful with oil. Now, I think that whole volatility epoch that we just went through is not going to come back to the same magnitude, but we may have another volatility epoch with oil as we potentially move into further operations, pre-midterm election or post-midterm election. But I think that at least tactically, oil is probably going to be trading at in between that 68 to about $72 a barrel. And if peace is had and everything is copacetic, then it's going to drift down to 65. But I doubt that happening. Most likely, it's going to probably stay at that 68, 72 range, roam around there, right? And it flares up, pops up, goes to close to 78, and then drifts back down. But you can't, it's all about just paying attention to the news and having the proper risk management to set up that hedge.
And the president also said some very colorful language. He said these people are scum, they're liars, they say one thing and do another. Is that surprising to anyone?
No, this is typical Trump. A few months ago, it's hard to keep all this straight, but he said he had achieved regime change in Iran. The previous leaders had been eliminated, and he now had this wonderful group of people that he was dealing with. So he will say anything at any time, and what he may have said in the past that he's contradicting simply doesn't bother him.
But at this point, he also seems to be admitting in a way that he was tricked by them. I mean, he said it to the press very clearly. He said these people are cuckoo, they say one thing in private and then the complete opposite. So he was calm?
They are cuckoo. They're cuckoo, loco, and scum. The only way to deal with the IRGC and the theocratic regime is to kill them. It's that simple. It's that simple. And then oil will stay down at, $65 a barrel. But if we keep on kicking the can down the road, it's going to cost more money, more people will be killed, and it's going to affect everybody's economy around the world more. And oh, by the way, if we solve the problem in the Middle East, we can use it as a leveraging point against China. Because guess what? China is building special ships where they get close to the shore. They have pillars that go pile drive into the sea, the floor of the sea. It raises up the actual ship, and they have a bridge that can be connected to another ship, and they have 3 of them. And then a boat comes and docks to it, unloads military personnel and heavy equipment vehicles like tanks, and rides down the track that's laid between the 3 ships. And the last track is actually on the shoreline. They're specifically designing and building these things and testing them now in China to attack Taiwan. So we need some leverage points against China. So no one's talking about this. No one's paying attention to what the Chinese are doing. Now, the United States has nothing like that. Nothing. There's no country in the world that has anything like that. It's pretty ingenious what they're doing. But our satellites that are right on China are staring at it, and we know exactly what they're doing and how many they have. Now, but we want to kick the can down the road for Iran because Trump is family.
That's correct. I mean, the negotiators he has working on this, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, don't know anything about Iran, don't know anything about nuclear weapons. Other than that, what could go wrong?
Well, many things at this point. As you say, the oil market is reacting very heavily to it. But just to move into NATO itself, there is a joint declaration. The allies also say they commit to Article 5, a message clear from the U.S. However, the Europeans will have to take care of their security. Overall, was this a good NATO summit or just the bare minimum?
Well, I think the final statement that was agreed to unanimously is a good statement, and I think it does advance a lot of objectives. I think frankly, the outcome for Ukraine, maybe not everything that Zelensky may have wanted, but still nonetheless very positive. If you leave Trump's critical remarks of Spain and a few other things that he said aside, I think this turns out to be positive for NATO. It's interesting, though, that there's no mention in the final statement of the 2027 NATO summit, which had been scheduled for Tirana, the capital of Albania. Frankly, it would not be a bad thing for NATO not to have a summit next year. Why roll the dice again?
What do you mean by that? Because Mark Rutte just said it will happen in Albania, but didn't give a date. Why would it be good to not have a NATO summit?
Well, number one, you don't need a NATO summit every year. If you look at the history of the alliance, sometimes they're once every 2 years, once every 3 years. In recent years, it's been every year, but there's no requirement for that. Who knows what Donald Trump's mood will be a year from now at some unspecified date. If you skipped a year or two, wouldn't be the end of the world.
And sir, I want to ask you just a final question on this point. As you said, he lashed at the Spanish. He said they're not a team player. And he also said when it comes to Denmark, they're not taking care of Greenland. He also repeated it should be, quote, under the control of the United States. You know the man one-on-one. Is this a fixation or does he really mean business? By the end of his term, Greenland will be controlled by the U.S.
No, he's trolling people, as they say. In the first term, I was in his office once. He was dictating a tweet, and he told the person typing the tweet, capitalize all the letters in that last sentence, which a lot of people, it drives them. It just is very, very distracting for people. And he turned and said to me, do you know why I just said that? And I said, no, why? And he said, because it drives them crazy. So why does he talk about taking Greenland? Because it drives them crazy. That's what it's about.
So it's a provocation. Well, Mr. Bolton, thank you so much for joining us on Euronews, as always.
All righty. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Goodnight Formula. Goodnight Formula will help you to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep, so you're consolidating memory and detoxifying your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. By doing this regularly, you'll be able to slow down the aging process and improve your brain function. Super important to take every night, as tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Another great supplement you can take in the morning or afternoon is the Clarity Factor. It gets rid of that brain fog and allows you to concentrate on tasks. And what will happen is that you'll have positive neuroplasticity. You'll be able to think faster and have better memory. Take this every day to help improve your brain function. Super important, and it will allow you to concentrate. Drink it with filtered water. Digestive enzyme complex. Super important if you're 40 years of age or older to help your pancreas. Your pancreas is how we digest. It produces enzymes to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. By taking digestive enzyme complex, you're helping your pancreas, because it has the enzymes to break up those carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. Allow you to absorb your nutrients with less stress on your pancreas. Super important. This also has bromelain to help break up clots, and it has the proteolytic enzymes to help to break up glycoproteins. Super important, especially during the cold season. So please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. Make sure you use discount 5, save some money. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Navalier and Associates out there in Reno, Nevada. Great Bloomberg opinion column out here today. Meta ushers in the era of the K-shaped company. A new class divide is emerging in big tech between those at the top of the artificial intelligence hierarchy and everyone else, with the former receiving high salaries and resources and the latter being viewed as disposable. Beth Poet joins us here. She is a Bloomberg opinion columnist, author of this piece. Beth, what's going on out there with some of these big tech companies? It seems like if you're in AI, they love you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I think tech has long thought of itself as this egalitarian utopia, and that's a much more complicated story, and we're seeing that play out again here, where I really think there is an AI hierarchy. There's the AI elite, and then there's everybody else. And even if you're doing things with AI, even if you're using AI tools, unless you are at the very top of this hierarchy, you are at risk.
Unless you're the kind of person who is recruited to work at, say, a Meta and in charge of developing the AI capabilities, everyone else just feels like they're, hired hands and disposable increasingly. Yep. What is happening at Meta that is really exacerbating this divide?
So we really are seeing this here. So there's, executives have thrown massive pay cut, like 9-figure salaries at developers, researchers, engineers who are really at the top of this field. Everybody else has faced the prospect of mass layoffs. I mean, we're talking, 10% of the company, multiple times over, right? We've seen multiple rounds of mass layoffs here. Workers have been surveyed in order to basically train their AI replacements. They've been drafted onto teams that are described as sort of soulless gulags. So it's this company that once was really one of the most coveted employers in Silicon Valley for a lot of people has now become, it's people are sort of hoping to get laid off. They want out. Well, what's really interesting here is Meta has walked some of this back. They've acknowledged recently that the way some of their various initiatives were rolled out was atrocious. They've said the environment is brutal. And I don't think this is because all of a sudden they discovered empathy. I think this is because it wasn't working, right? Like they are not winning the AI race. And I mean, that's not a big surprise that if you treat employees this way, they're not going to perform for you. So I think they've kind of realized that a little bit. They know what the problem is.
They know what the problem is. How are they solving it? Because there is a talent war. You just talked about these 9-figure salaries for.
Now, for the ones that are watching the dashboard, you'll notice that there was a big drop in the S&P 500, big candle drop. VIX spiked up, and oil started to go up to 72.68, and natural gas now is trading at 2.896. It was trading at 2.874. We also have in the 10-year price, it dropped, and Bitcoin dropped, and the dollar is starting to gain. So there's something that is happening in the market, maybe some news that I don't see popping up yet. But this is the reason why I said you got to pay attention and have a little bit of risk management. All right, there's lots of ways to do it. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but there are 1,000 ways to do risk management. But just pay attention to the price curves that are on the dashboard here. There is a little bit of movement going on here.
Pyramid, and I think just like we see in the K-shaped economy, these employees, they're fearful, they resent what's happening, and that is also happening here in corporate America.
Well said. Let me just interrupt for a moment because we do have a headline here. President Trump says the U.S. has agreed to continue talks with Iran. He posted this on Truth Social. He said, "We have alerted Iran ceasefire is over. Iran has asked us to continue talks, and so the U.S. has agreed to continue Iran talks." In terms of the market impact, looking at crude oil.
All right. So this is what I was talking about. This is those news events that I'm talking about. So officially, the MOU or the ceasefire done, but there's going to be further talks. So we're actually farther behind in moving the ball forward in allowing for peace in that region, reducing the conflict between the United States and Iran. We're farther away from that. Okay, so but pay attention to the market now. It may mean revert back up, but there is some price movement here because of what just happened with Trump.
For a long time, and since I acquired that Hynix about 15 years ago, so this is one of our milestones. We have to access to the U.S. capital market. So now dream comes true. So people asking why now, but this is kind of earliest moment we can have.
The earliest moment possible. $26.5 billion is a lot of money. But in the context of SK's commitment domestically in Korea and internationally, not so big. Can we expect multiple returns to ADRs? The sale of multiple rounds of ADRs?
Well, yes, I expect we can deliver those things too. So we try to expand our ADR size and also better. That actually requires a better return. So once we have the better return, then there is more demand. So first thing is that we have to keep the stock price stable.
with Iran. Philip Tell is with me. And look, we've had President Trump saying that Iran's military has been effectively destroyed, but nonetheless we see that Iran is still able to carry out attacks on American allies. How do you read and understand what the
Based on that news from Trump, everything's starting to revert back to before the announcement.
It's key to flex its muscles because it knows that the Americans are in a weak spot right now as far as the war in Iran is concerned. They want to put the pressure on American bases or American soldiers based outside of Iran and on Iran's immediate neighbors to put pressure on the US to end the war. They know that they can play this out. They are facing a long-term project here to try to destabilize the United States, and the longer this goes on, the more chance the Iranian regime has of surviving. The problem is that Iran's economy is suffering very badly. I'll give you a couple of figures. $270 billion worth of damage to the economy since the start of the war back in February, and the International Monetary Fund says it expects the economy to contract by 6.1% this year. The United Nations warning that over 4 million Iranians are now living below or could live below the poverty line as a result of the war. So there is pressure on the Iranians also economically to be able to get over this war and to get the country back on its feet. So I think it's flexing its muscles by showing, yes, well, we're still a force to be reckoned with. We're contradicting what Donald Trump says, which is basically it's all been destroyed. There's no army, there's no navy. Well, yes, there is, because we're able to fight back and we're able to shoot missiles into other Gulf states to prove that we're still a force to be reckoned with.
Look, Donald Trump also saying earlier this week that the ceasefire with Iran is over, it's done. But look, what alternative really is there to the peace talks that they need to hash out?
Well, if you read between the lines of what Donald Trump's been saying, he says the ceasefire is over, but there's no mention of the peace talks being over. So these are still carrying on behind the scenes. It's difficult. The prospect of this 60-day memorandum of understanding coming to fruition, there being a peace deal between Iran and the United States, is looking incredibly fragile right now. But there is still a push, I think, on both sides to try to find some way forward, basically because there is no other alternative. They don't want either the United States or the Iranians to go back to full-scale war. That will be a disaster for Iran. It would also be a disaster for Donald Trump. Remember, the war is vastly unpopular in the United States. Only 36% of Americans think it's a good idea. 57% oppose it. Donald Trump has midterm elections coming up. He's also in the same predicament as far as his popularity rating is concerned because of the economy in the United States as well. So all of these problems are coming together to make it very complicated for Donald Trump to find a way out. And he's now saying, well, basically, Iran doesn't have a nuclear problem anymore. It's been destroyed. So therefore, the war has been a success. I think he's trying to pull this towards himself to make it look like a success story for the United States. But behind the scenes, it is a real mess, and no one really knows where this is going right now.
Morning, Joe. The fact that the MOU is so obviously lopsided in Iran's favor is paradoxically a reason why I don't think we will see, or I don't anticipate a return to full-fledged war. There was a phrase that President Trump used in the context of Israel and Lebanon a few weeks ago. You may recall, he said, a ceasefire in this region is when the two sides are shooting at each other a bit less. There was a truth to that, I think, and there's a truth to that in this context as well, which is that what we're seeing here with Iran attacking ships and the United States striking back is a kind of skirmishing. They're feeling each other out to say, I don't want you to take license with this MOU, but I don't want to walk away from it. And by the way, I think that applies to Iran as well, not just because of the inducement of the MOU and the fact that it gives them very substantial sanctions relief, but also their own economy is in serious, serious trouble that is masked by some of this diplomacy. So look, keep your eye on the ball. I think there are talks in Islamabad, Pakistan tomorrow between the US and the Iranian teams. And I still think diplomacy will be restored. I don't think we're going to see a slide back into anything like the scale of fighting that we saw just a few months ago. I think that's quite unlikely still.
Willie, it's so curious watching the president go along with this MOU for a while. This is, Donald Trump loathes weakness in his political opponents, and when he sees weakness, people flattering him, he drills down harder and harder and harder. It's the same thing with Iran. They exploit the weaknesses of American presidents, whether it's Jimmy Carter worried about his upcoming election with Ronald Reagan, or whether it's Donald Trump worried about the midterm. So you had the lifting of oil sanctions, the most liberal lifting of oil sanctions in Iran since 1979. They make billions and billions of dollars, not required to do anything in return, and they saw that as weakness. So they just ran over us, and so now the president's pushing back. But where does that end?
Yeah, and the president has been bored with this war, let's just be honest, for months and months and months. He thought it was going to be quick. He thought it would bring Iran to its knees with the early military campaign, perhaps topple the regime. Remember, on the day after this began in late February, he said the people need to rise up in the streets against the dictatorship in Iran, to which they said, we just tried that a couple of months ago, and about 30 or 40,000 of us were murdered. So all of this was known, except apparently to the people around the president. And so, Peter Baker, if you listen to President Trump, even just this week at the NATO summit, railing against the JCPOA, the Obama-Iran deal, going into great detail, regaling stories of the pallets of cash, which pales in comparison to the amount of money proposed in this MOU that would go directly into the leadership of Iran, that $300 billion investment fund, for example. So where does this White House feel it is right now when its only recourse is to bomb more targets, and Iran really not caving the way it would, except to attack our neighbors, our Gulf allies?
Yeah, we're kind of in a stasis period, neither full war nor peace. And there's no likelihood, or this doesn't seem like a likelihood, that that's going to change in a decisive way anytime soon, right? It could go on like this for quite a while. You neither have a full resolution of it. At the same time, you leave forces in the region and flex your muscles from time to time and try to keep Iran off balance. But the truth is, Iran sees the political clock here at home just like we do. They understand what's happening here in terms of the midterm elections, and they have an incentive to kind of drag this out a little bit, because that inflicts more pain on President Trump and his party potentially going into the fall.
Yeah, I've been reporting on that this week as well. I mean, Peter's exactly right. The president does not want a resumption of full-on hostilities. Yes, there will be these skirmishes. Yes, some targeted bombings, but to what end? There's not really much damage left to be inflicted on Iran in terms of military sites. It would require a real escalation to make a difference, and Trump doesn't want to do that, but he's left with a pretty bad hand. The midterms are rapidly approaching, and Mike Article, we're at this moment now. This can't be said enough. The hardliners in Tehran, even with a missing supreme leader, are more empowered now than they were at the start of the war, in particular because they control the Strait of Hormuz. And as we've been talking about this week, that is simply unacceptable to the Gulf allies, the U.S.'s Gulf allies, those in the region, who remind those in the administration that the Strait of Hormuz before the war was open and free to use for all. And now Iran continues to know that's their point of leverage. They're going to insist upon fees or tolls or whatever they're going to call it. And those in the region who have frankly borne the brunt of the Iranian assaults are saying, and now we're going to pay them to rebuild?
The Iranians have already won. They've already won. We do this every day. We talk about this every day. Hot war, cold war, on again, off again. Let's not go to Spain ever again. Things like that. It's the level of exhaustion, frustration, and chaos for the last decade, really, in the American government. You can feel it out there on the streets, in supermarkets, at gas stations. You can feel the American public carrying that level and wondering about it. And David French, I'm wondering whether you think that level of frustration that is out there among the American public. We've been carrying a load for a long, long time. I don't know where this goes, but it's out there.
Yeah, I think at this point it's pretty clear that everyone except basically the core MAGA base now is over Trump. And even that core MAGA base is beginning to whittle away, just sort of step by step by step. I mean,
well, look, Trump, I definitely have Trump fatigue. I want Trump to just solve the problems, get the job done in Iran, kill the IRGC, fix the White House, deal with domestic issues, get some of these bills that have been discussed passed, and then exit stage. I'm tired of Trump. I really am tired of Trump. So he's right about that. And I voted for him 3 times. And I also feel that Trump has a tendency to act very unpresidential. You know, it's time that he needs to grow up. You know, hopefully he grows up in his last 2 years in the administration. I doubt it, but I have Trump fatigue, especially with the fiasco that's going on in the market with him. He opens up his mouth one day and then, 3 hours later, he's saying the opposite. He's bipolar.
From the beginning, put himself in a box. He sold himself this war, and perhaps even the war was sold to him as sort of a Venezuela 2.0. He's said this again and again and again. He keeps talking about Venezuela. He thought he was buying another 24-hour, 48-hour sort of fabulous victory where he's able to shape a nation with a very quick and lightning strike. And then when that didn't happen, he began to pursue, he was immediately sort of over the conflict. He wanted to end the war, but he also wanted to declare victory. And that put him in this box negotiating with Iran. This put him in a box now. He wants this over, but he also still wants to declare victory. Those are not compatible goals as long as Iran stays in the fight. And that's why Iran's strategic position just keeps improving, even though, it is taking serious damage from American forces. Overall, its strategic position improves, in large part because Trump's political position is so incredibly weak.
Well, Shashank, yes.
So I was throwing a cowgirl-themed bachelorette party, which naturally required sequin cowboy hats for all 10 guests. But what did I...
Well, Shashank, yes, Trump's position is politically weak here, but in some ways, I guess the question is, has he got away with this more than we think he might have done? Gas prices are coming down. They never went to $150 or $200 a barrel. The IMF is just revising its downward forecast for the global economy a little bit less. Asian countries do seem to have weathered the storm. If we are in, as Peter is describing, this period of stasis going forward, what are the repercussions for Donald Trump? Has he actually managed to get away with this more than the predictions might have been just 2 or 3 months ago?
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting distinction there, isn't there, Kathy, between the political ramifications and the strategic ones? Because politically, what he did avoid is the temptation to double down and escalate in a big way. For example, we were discussing the possibility of ground operations against Harangue Island or a full-fledged amphibious assault on Iran's Persian Gulf coast. And you could argue that, unlike previous presidents who doubled down on major land wars in the Middle East, rolling the dice in pursuit of victory, which never came, he's avoided that temptation. He's avoided the apocalyptic scenarios on gas prices. He's avoided mass American casualties through a land invasion. And all of that speaks to some degree of restraint and more sensible decision-making, knowing when to pull away from the brink. And that could limit the scale of damage he incurs come the midterms in November, though I personally doubt it will be enough to save him from very serious bruising. But what I don't think that will save him from is the loss of American prestige and standing. That is profound. What's happened is it has been demonstrated visibly and globally that America neither has the ability nor the stomach to reopen the Strait of Hormuz by force. It means that the Iranian sword of Damocles, these missile forces, drone forces, will hang over that region. The Memorandum of Understanding even commits America to withdrawing forces from the vicinity of Iran, which is a very ambiguous sentence. I think it means naval forces, carriers, but it could be interpreted by the Gulf states in other ways. And the impact on allies, on perceptions of American power, I believe that will be lasting and generational. And I think that you can't run away from that.
Okay. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Miatrol. This will help to build muscle. This is perfect if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. This has the polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. When you're older, it's harder to maintain and build muscle. Do some resistance training, take Myotrol, and you will build muscle. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from taking Myotrol because it'll help you to get stronger for your sport. And it'll help to improve your energy levels because it helps to improve the health of your mitochondria. Now, as you get older, you start to methylate your genes, so the gene expression changes. It's called epigenetics, and that happens during aging. You want to slow down the methylation process. So keep the inflammation down, soak up the free radicals, take the proper supplementation, and take Myotrol, and you're going to be able to build muscle. Now, building muscle will also help to improve brain function. Why? By building muscle, especially your calves, you're going to be able to have better venous return flow to your heart. And that means that your vascular system is moving better. In addition, when you build muscle, you're increasing the concentrations of myokines and BDNF, which are super important because they're neuroprotective. So there's a correlation between brain function into your geriatric years and actually musculature. So it's really important to pay attention to me. I know what I'm talking about. Get the Myotrol. Now, gladiator barley, this will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, but also help to build muscle. Do some resistance training and take the gladiator barley. You can take it separately or stack it with the Myotrol. I highly recommend you stacking it because the gladiator barley has the building blocks to build muscle. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. So please go to my store, get the gladiator barley. Now, it doesn't just help building muscle. Gladiator barley will help to improve your immune system and your endocrine system, cardiovascular health, help with you recovering after a workout, bringing down inflammation, helping with brain function. If you pay attention to me, I'm telling you supplements that will help multiple systems of your body so you get the max benefit. Heirloom barley detoxifies your body, soaks up free radicals, brings down inflammation. So you're helping with your immune system, your endocrine system, and all your other systems that I just mentioned. It doesn't help with building muscle. So if you want all that plus build muscle, get the gladiator barley. Now, if you're an athlete or you have a kid that's in athletics, I highly recommend you getting the gladiator barley for them and the Myotrol. Tell them to take it every day while they're working out, and they're going to gain more strength for their sport and recover quicker after their workout because it's keeping the inflammation down. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All right, let's listen into live now about this. Trump vows ceasefire with Iran is over.
A few minutes ago, President Trump posted on Truth Social all related to the conflict with Iran. Popping this up on your screen to give you a look, he said, the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue quote-unquote talks. We have agreed to do so, but the United States has stated to them in no uncertain terms that the ceasefire is over. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So President Trump taking to Truth Social this morning, reiterating that ceasefire is no longer active. It is over at this point. Now, we also know at this point the U.S. military says that it has hit 90 targets across Iran during this week's renewed strikes, coming after Iran again began attacking ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And we brought you this just a little bit earlier, but want to pop it up on your screen once again, as U.S. Central Command wanted to clarify that Iran is not in charge of the Strait of Hormuz. They said Iranian state media claims that transit through the Strait of Hormuz is only permitted through routes designated by Iran. Truth, Iran does not control the Strait of Hormuz. Since early May, U.S. forces have helped facilitate the successful transit of more than 800 commercial vessels and 380 million barrels of crude oil through the vital international trade corridor. Now, we also learned from the Wall Street Journal today that Israel shared new intelligence with the U.S. that it said indicated a fresh Iranian plot to kill President Trump. That is the Wall Street Journal reporting via sources. And of course, we know that would mark an escalation in the war between the U.S. and Iran. So we're tracking all of this here on Live Now from Fox, but also want to pop this up on your screen in case you missed it a bit earlier. Coming in from President Trump on Truth Social, it says, the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue talks. We have agreed
Now,
to
what's
do
interesting
so,
that when he released this, it started changing the momentum of the market. The S&P 500, for the ones that are watching the dashboard, because we're live streaming on Rumble and YouTube, ones that are watching the dashboard, the S&P 500 is at 7,541. VIX is at 1574. It spiked up and then came back down. But the S&P 500 is roughly hovering at the open. Dollar is still stable. It's at 117. Japanese yen, that's the euro. Not 117. I'm sorry. The euro is at 114, and the Japanese yen is at 161.81. Now, oil is trading at 71.92. It went as high as 72, over $72, and it came back down. Now, what is interesting here is the natural gas. It's trading at 2.895. The low point for intraday trading was at 2.874. This is natural gas. Now, it was trending down the last several trading sessions, broke the $3 mark, and then started selling lower. And I've been shorting natural gas. Now, I closed my short position for today, and what is happening is it's trending up towards 2.9. So just pay attention that as we're moving into the weekend, there's event risk. There probably will be some sort of retaliation, maybe by Iran or the United States or even Israel. It's probably a high probability one of the three is going to do something. And there's going to be some tumultuous thing that happens, not really bad, but just something that may shake the markets a little bit. But overall, by year end, I think the S&P 500 will be trading at 7,800 or 8,000. I'm a little bit worried about the S&P 500 after 8,000, but we have to look at the price curve, wait it out. Now, 10-year Treasury is going down for the price, so yields are going up. So pay attention to that. Yields are going up. People are concerned about inflation. So what's the Federal Reserve going to do? Most likely they're going to hold for the near term. But what happens if inflation's still high by year end? They're probably going to have to raise rates. So it's going to add a little bit of tension into the market. If they raise rates, the market in the short term for the S&P 500 probably will sell off. All right, so, and then two other ETFs that are important to pay attention to if you want to play the energy market, Gush and DRIP. Gush is longing energy companies, and DRIP is shorting those energy companies. Today, the shorts are winning. The DRIP is trading at 5.05, and Gush is trading at 32.39. So as oil is starting to trend down, there is a positive correlation between Gush and oil, but it doesn't always happen that way, right? Sometimes oil can be stable or going down. The equity market is really climbing, and Gush will climb too because the energy companies are tied to the S&P 500, and all the stocks would be buoyant because of that. That's not the case today, and there's this big rotation out of the Mag 7 and going into other stocks, maybe tangential to AI tech companies, or just moving into defense plays but there is a rotation. It seems like there's a rotation coming out of the Mag 7. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root. This will help to control your blood glucose levels and your cortisol levels. That's really important to help with your immune system and cardiovascular health. Turmeric soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. That's important. You're going to be recovering after a workout quicker. Your immune system will be better. Your endocrine system will be better. And your cardiovascular system will be better. Why? By bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you have less concentrations of oxidized LDL. Therefore, you have less plaque formation. Lignans helps with the immune system and the endocrine system. It's going to soak up free radicals and bring down that inflammation. Now, you can take them separately, but I highly recommend that you stack them. Why? Because it's synergistic. It's going to boost up your immune system, help with your endocrine system, help with brain function, help with your cardiovascular system. And you're going to slow down the aging process. If you do this regularly, take the lignans, the turmeric, and the ashwagandha together. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you save some money by using discount 5. All caps, discount number 5.
The United States has stated to them in no uncertain terms that the ceasefire is over. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We also have this post coming in from Trey Yingst, our buddy over at Fox News, where he reiterates all of that, saying President Trump says the ceasefire with Iran is over. Quote, the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue talks. We have agreed to do so, but the United States has stated to them in no uncertain terms the ceasefire is over. So very firm words coming in from President Trump.
All right, this is BBC talking about, Qatari negotiators arrive in Iran. So let's listen to that. That's from Fox.
People who have a lot of credit card debt can be thankful for this. There's something called financial hardship that allows Americans to get immediate financial.
Tensions remain high in the Middle East. Mediators are pushing to restart talks between the U.S. and Iran after the latest round of fighting. All of this coming as Israeli intelligence reportedly reveals another plot to assassinate President Donald Trump. Mike Tobin is live in Tel Aviv. He's got the latest details on that for us. Hello, Mike.
And Senator, we just got word in the last few minutes that Qatari negotiators have arrived in Iran with the blessing of the United States and the goal of de-escalation as well as trying to get the Iranians back to the bargaining table. This, as you mentioned, Israeli intelligence, according to the Wall Street Journal, relayed to the United States a very specific plot to assassinate President Trump. That last bit of information, frankly, doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. The Iranians have not been subtle about it. If you look at the funeral for the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the banners they displayed, they read, "We will kill Trump," both in English and in Farsi. Iranian threats to kill Trump date back to 2020 when Qasem Soleimani was killed during Trump's first term. The interviews with...
Yeah, because when you're killing, when you're putting a contract on the head of the United States, you got to do it in Farsi and in English.
Person chants at the funeral were, "By the blood of the martyred Ayatollah, we will kill Trump." A lot of anti-American and anti-Israel chants. Despite Iran violating the memorandum of understanding by firing on civilian cargo ships, a U.S. source says talks to end this conflict are happening behind the scenes. Now, General Keith Kellogg says the 14-point memorandum of understanding needs to be scrapped, and Iran needs to get the message that the U.S. is serious.
You're going to lay off your neighbors. You're going to stop shooting at Kuwait. You're going to stop shooting at the Emirates. You're going to stop supporting Hamas, and you stop supporting Hezbollah, and you're going to stop supporting the Houthis.
The ones that are home gamers, that are watching this in real time. Natural gas is testing that barrier of 2.9. It's testing it right now. It's like trying to get above it. Now, with this event risk that's happening with Trump, natural gas may actually pass that barrier and start trading above 2.9. Okay, let's continue.
And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel had a phone conversation with President Trump yesterday. Netanyahu does not support President Trump's desire to sell F-35 fighter jets to Turkey. The Prime Minister emphasized comments from the Turkish president in the past against the existence of Israel. Netanyahu has been making the argument that the balance of power in the Middle East is maintained by Israeli air superiority. Sandra?
Okay. Mike, as far as what may be happening next in the coming minutes and hours, what are we looking for as far as White House and international reaction to the moment?
Well, I think what we're looking for right now is dialogue and any indication that things are going to move forward with talking as opposed to firing and sending messages back and forth. Whenever the U.S. fires into Iran, they respond by firing on their neighbors. And we're also going to see if this 14-point memorandum of understanding is going to really see the light of day again, since it was clearly disregarded by the Iranians, and then the U.S. ended the ceasefire.
Interesting to note also the latest that we heard from the president as he was departing on his trip about being the #1 target for Iran. So we'll see what we hear from the White House today. Final thought there, Mike?
You got it.
All right.
Thank you, Mike. I want to bring in Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State and CIA Director, now Fox News contributor. And sir, I know you're out somewhere. Go ahead and tell us what you make of the negotiations now underway in Tehran. So does this suggest that the bombing for 2 straight nights drove Iran back to the table?
Well, Bill, I think that's pretty unlikely. I suspect they'll hear the Qataris out, but most certainly they're not going to change their behavior. We've seen this for 47 years, Bill. There's no reason to think that a couple attacks they've responded to, right? They fired into the Emirates, to Bahrain, to Kuwait. No reason to think that that will change their long-term vision, which is what they said in the streets, which is they want to kill President Trump, they want to destroy the United States, and they want to take out Israel as well. I suspect the Qataris are trying to create a temporary ceasefire, but the chance of a long-term change in this regime seems like a 0 probability event.
Okay, Institute for Study of War. Here we go on the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's attacks illustrate that Iran views control over the strait as its primary strategic deterrent, and that Iran is unlikely to abandon its efforts to control the strait in response to opposition from the Gulf states. Based on your military career, how difficult is it to take out all the drones and the missile batteries that have lined this 950-mile stretch of the Persian Gulf?
Bill, what I continue to hear from our senior leaders in the Navy is that it is a very difficult task, but it's entirely possible to achieve. Economic pressure, continued blockade, and then working to take down that capacity. You'll never get them all. You'll never totally eliminate their capabilities, and they've had those for years, but you can greatly diminish the risk. You can open the strait. You can get commercial underwriters to allow insurance for ships that travel through the strait. And I think that's the path that President Trump will ultimately choose to go down.
Wow, very interesting answer. We'll watch that. Meanwhile, in China, Stuart has run under the radar a bit. They made a test this week of a ballistic missile in the South China Sea, and it's designed for the nuclear program. Here's what we say now from the State Department. At a time when the United States is working harder than ever to prevent nuclear proliferation, China is doing the opposite. Beijing's rapid and opaque nuclear weapons buildup is of great concern to the region and to the world. That's Tommy Pigott. He's going to join us next hour on this and other topics. But what do you make of President Xi's military move this week?
Bill, we've known that they had this capability, this submarine-launched ballistic missile long range, but I think it's the first time they've actually fired it at full range with no nuclear warhead, but fully nuclear capable. The place they fired it as well, a trajectory that was to the south and east, not too far from U.S. facilities like in Guam. This was clearly Xi Jinping demonstrating that this South China Sea is something he cares deeply about. This puts him in a better position with respect to his efforts to coerce the Taiwanese and, frankly, to threaten the Japanese and the Philippines as well. This was very intentional on Xi Jinping's part, and I think the timing is unmistakable. He thinks the United States is focused someplace else.
and he's working to build his capabilities in the Pacific, in his part of the world.
Yeah, very interesting. We think so much about Iran, this rare test. I would assume that you would think more to come. How much do you think China is helping Iran right now?
Oh, Bill, an awful lot. They're helping them with money. That is, the Iranians have allowed Chinese vessels to flow out of the strait. They've paid them for the oil. They provide intelligence services to them. And more than that, that backstop the Iranians knowing that they have the Chinese with the wind at their back. This is something that continues to allow the Iranian regime to behave the way that they are. Both the Russians and the Chinese are in cahoots with the Iranians, and they are working against the United States of America in ways that are very serious for the national security of the American people.
Great to have you on. Mike Pompeo, thanks. Come back soon, okay, sir?
Thank you, Bill.
We're going to go.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
We're going to go to CNBC about the Strait of Hormuz. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the zeolite. This will help to detoxify your body. You can also detoxify your body by taking the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. With zeolite, this will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. You can use 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink filtered water, do that daily. This zeolite you can take every day. Some zeolite out there you can't. This you can, all right? Detoxify your body really is super important to help with your immune system and your endocrine system. And your organ systems will perform better. Now again, this will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Also, make sure you go around your house and get rid of cleaning supplies or paints or other chemicals that are in your home, in your basement, in your garage that you don't need. If you need them, put them in double layer containers to reduce the degassing, because that's getting into your environment and you're breathing that in over time in small concentrations that do build up. In addition, make sure that you drink filtered water and eat better quality food. Stay away from processed foods, because a lot of these processed foods have chemicals in them that are bad for your body, especially your gut biome. So get the zeolite, take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, and drink filtered water. Do that daily. If you want a heavier detox, take zeolite, do 5 small drops or 10 small drops, drink the filtered water, do that daily until the bottle's done, and you do that once or twice a year. So you either do a heavy detox or a maintenance detox. I recommend the maintenance detox. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the zeolite.
Through the Strait of Hormuz, near a standstill, that's according to industry data. Just 2 tankers sailed through in the early hours of Thursday, that's according to data from Kepler. This as shipping risks escalate after multiple strikes in the region. Meanwhile, industry sources told Reuters that some shipping companies have been advised to pause connections through the strait amid the uncertainty. So Richard Mead, editor-in-chief at Lloyd's List, joins us now for more on this. So from a shipping perspective, Richard, what do you make of all this? Of course, the risk profile seems to have fundamentally changed now. What are you seeing in terms of ships traversing the strait?
Well, as of this morning, there's not a huge amount of traffic going through at all. Where we are seeing ships going through is in the northern route, which is effectively the Iran-approved and controlled route, where ships are moving under government-to-government agreements. That hasn't really stopped, despite the attacks. What has stopped is the ships moving through the southern route. This is the ships traversing the Oman coast, and this is the bit that was nominally given U.S. protection, and that's where we saw the 3 ships.
So wait a minute here. So Trump's intervention in the region basically nullified the freedom of navigation, maritime freedom of navigation. Again, Trump failed, because he wasn't willing to go all war. Now, we need to take a lesson learned from General Grant during the Civil War. He won because he did full war. Trump's stupid. Trump is stupid with this. He failed. And then now, all the straits around the world are in question on maritime law. has been around for hundreds of years. And Trump blew that up because he thought he knew better. Because Trump doesn't really understand history. He doesn't understand law very well. And he acts like a 13-year-old sometimes.
Now, these were state-owned ships, state-owned by Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, which I would say is probably calibrated to send a very clear message to their Gulf state neighbors. So, consequently, right now, shipping is again in a state of limbo. I suspect we're probably going to see ships start transiting again as confidence builds if there are no more attacks. And we're just going to be in this cycle of escalation and de-escalation. Shipping is really just sort of trying to play the windows when they open. I don't see this really fundamentally changing until there is some stable, credible control system in place that shipping can trust.
Richard, you mentioned there that you do expect the ships to start again.
What is interesting in the currency market, the dollar is weakening a little bit. The Japanese yen is starting to strengthen. It's at 161.62. When, for the ones that don't know, I look at some risk factors. One risk factor is the Japanese yen strengthening. If it is, and the VIX is going up, that is really bad for equities. VIX index is still at 15. But if we continue to see a precipitous strengthening of the Japanese yen and the weakening of the US dollar, we may see that equities may be selling off here. All right. Or people are concerned about event risk over the weekend because of what Trump just released. Right now, equities are stable at the moment. VIX is stable. It's trading at, the S&P 500 is trading at 7,551. But I've always looked at the VIX and the Japanese yen as risk indicators. And one risk indicator is starting to flash red for me, and that's the Japanese yen. Now, if it goes below 159, right now it's trading at 161. If it gets closer to 159, I think you may actually have a spike in the VIX. And I'll be doing an analysis over the weekend about all the charts that I look at and my assessment on the trading ranges. So just stay tuned. I'll probably release that on Sunday. Another thing that's going to happen on Sunday, hopefully, is my discussion with John Hogue. We're going to do another show tomorrow, or not tomorrow, on Sunday. And hopefully we'll be able to discuss about our take on what's happening in the news and how this is going to progress. Okay, let's continue on with the Strait of Hormuz. In limbo as tankers seize every opening. Lloyd's List.
Transiting the strait, but via the Iran-desired route, which is more of the middle of the strait. But I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, what we're seeing now is if you do decide, or these shipping companies do decide to take that risk on, which route do they take? Do they take the US-approved route, which hugs the coast of Oman, but then risk the aggression from the IRGC, or do they do the Iran-approved route where they have to pay the fee, but then it does put them in the crosshairs of the US? They could come foul under Washington.
Well, yes, you are, in the point of dilemma here as a ship owner. The reality is that the ships that are taking the northern route, these are generally with direct government-to-government negotiations. So we've seen a number of Japanese vessels move, Chinese vessels, India. These are governments that have been negotiating directly with Tehran. Now, the ones that are taking the southern route, they are not. Now, essentially what we are seeing develop is a bifurcation of global trade, geopolitically conditioned. Some ships are able, some ships aren't. And this is a question of individual risk appetite from the ship owners right now. But unless we get some clarity over what is and isn't allowed, what is or is not going to,
Let me just interject here. The natural gas futures, it's testing that 2.9 level, resistance level. This is the third time it's testing it. Now, if it breaks, it's going to start trading above the 2.9 for a little while. If it fails, it'll start to, go down and march down to 2.875.
Require some sort of additional security. We're just going to see this period of ebbs and flows of traffic, and that's what we have right now. Shipping is once again in limbo, and the war risk insurance rates have skyrocketed again. I think, realistically, you probably will see some ships starting to take the southern route again, assuming there are no attacks. But as I say, this is not a stable situation, and the vessel traffic numbers are still way below what we would describe as normal.
Oh, what about marine insurance premiums? We've seen them rising off the back of these tensions. Do you expect those to go higher, and how quickly do they filter into costs? And beyond insurance, what other operating costs are these tankers facing?
Well, inevitably we saw war risks, premiums skyrocket in the wake of those last three attacks. They have been coming down slowly. I mean, generally as a rule, insurance is quick to go up and slow to come back down again. And we had seen it coming back down right up until the point that we saw these attacks. It will depend on who you are. It is calibrated to sort of the geopolitical conditions, where the ship is owned, who is chartering it, where it is flagged. These are all sort of part and parcel of how risk assessment is being played on an hour-to-hour basis by shipping right now. And that's going to continue. Now, in the grand scheme of things, the additional insurance is probably not going to play too much of a part in the short term in terms of the actual cost of the cargo. There are other factors in terms of the operational costs and supply and demand factors. But ultimately, if we see elevated risk being the norm here, then we are going to have to see a sort of calibration of pricing, and that will filter through into trade. But right now, this is about the traffic volumes going in and out, and this is about how quickly we can restart refineries and recalibrate world trade, assuming we do get some sort of agreement to get ships in and out again.
So what also happens to freight rates? Where do you see those heading? I mean, could they in some way offset the higher operational costs?
For the moment, yes.
For the ones that are watching the dashboard, you'll notice that the natural gas, the NG future contract, is now trading at 2.910. All you gotta do is pay attention to me. You make money. It's that simple. I have a very, very strong pattern recognition brain. Most people don't have it.
This is temporary. This is an industry in limbo. This is not normal market dynamics at play. So we're just going to have to wait and see what the traffic looks like.
Mm-hmm. And the bottom line is that the professional traders are pushing oil down. It's now trading at 71.29. But that 2.9 barrier is being tested. All right, let's continue. Let's listen into AI bust fallout would be more significant than .com. Well, let's see what happens there.
There's really nothing new under the sun, and that's because human nature doesn't change. The characters change, the names change, but it's fear and greed. We can go back to the South Sea bubble, Dutch tulip bulb mania. History repeats itself over and over again.
Put AI into that context here, because people have been positioning AI. Other than electricity, there's been nothing more important than AI. How do you think about just this whole concept writ large?
I'm not bearish on AI per se. I'm sure we're all going to use it. Many of us are using it already. The question is, what's the ROI on the AI? It starts out, the way these bubbles all start, there's a kernel of truth that captures the imagination of the individual, whether it's the South Sea bubble or it's Dutch tulip bulbs, or it's .com, which I've lived through.
Yep.
And it starts out as a good idea, but what happens is the price changes immeasurably. And the best definition, I've actually heard of a bubble. There are many definitions. The best one I've heard is something that changes human behavior, that people do things that they wouldn't do otherwise, whether it's because of FOMO, fear of missing out, or otherwise. And I think that's kind of where we are with AI. I mean,
anyone that tries to try to figure out the fundamentals of the market, the fundamentals of the economy, doesn't mean anything. It's all about behavior. It's all about emergent behavior, behavioral finance. It's not about fundamentals. Never has been, never will be. If it was, then markets would be in equilibrium all the time. But because markets are not in equilibrium all the time, because there's dislocations, there's disequilibrium between suppliers and the ones that want something, the buyers and the sellers, there's a disequilibrium there. It's more about behavior. And it's not about just behavior. It's about perception of movement. So you have behavior, but if you go into the function of behavior, it's about perception of movement, velocity, acceleration of price. And this is why the Greeks, for the ones that do option trading, it's so important to pay attention to delta and gamma. All you gotta do is listen to me and you'll make money. All you gotta do is listen to me and you'll get healthy. It's that simple. I am very good at what I do.
I'm happy to change my mind, but show me the money. Where's the ROI? And I don't see it. I don't see it coming either.
Doesn't seem to be deterring capital from flowing to that business. We've seen extraordinary amounts of equity raised. Now we're seeing tech companies that never even thought about the bond market raising tens of billions of dollars in the investment grade bond market. We've got a Korean company listing its ADRs today here in the U.S. I mean, I've been on global Wall Street for 30 years. I've never seen this amount of money flow.
The things I read the same sources you do. I file it under my category on X of things you don't see at the bottom. We've seen this movie before with Japanese subtitles, housing subtitles, tech subtitles. Go back to .com. I actually think this is much worse than .com, simply because the sums involved are that much greater.
This is really important because, the fossils sitting around the table, we talked about Will Danoff a couple of days ago. Remember being in meetings at 60 State Street, .com and all that. What's the distinction right now versus 98, 99, and then what?
It's not about .com. He's getting to the point where it's about behavior and it's a bubble for AI. It's not .com. It's the railroads. It's about 1873. 1873, where there was a heavy investment in the railroads. They were doing financial engineering through trusts that were not backed by deposits. The banks started to fail, and then everything started to crash. Overinvestment in the build-out. Now, this AI is very similar. There's an over build-out with the hyperscalers. No one knows that corporations are actually going to benefit from AI. There's no business case that really substantially increases your revenues. It may help with at the margins for revenue increase or expense reduction. So it's a marginal gain. And companies are starting to pay attention. Well, wait a minute, we have to pay all this money for tokens. So what's the benefit? And we don't own the model. And we're dependent on this frontier model from another company. And then everyone's thinking, well, maybe we need to redo this and have it all proprietary in-house and all this stuff. So this thing is in flux and it has to shake out. So there's an overbuild out with these hyperscalers. And these hyperscalers are starting to issue corporate debt. Now, there's a lot of liquidity out there. But what happens when people start asking questions like, where's the beef? Show me the beef. Where's the profit? And when the hyperscalers say, it's not there yet, people are going to start to sell. And there's going to be more downgrades for their corporate debt. Take a look at Oracle. Oracle is a big, gigantic, major powerhouse. And they're just one grade above junk in terms of bond issuance, corporate debt issuance. Oracle. This is more like 1873, but because everyone's so focused on .com because it's tech. No, it's a build out of a communication system. That's what AI is. It's a build out of a communication system. Stop using the word tech. And it's no different than the railroads. 1873 is what we're talking about here. But all the experts think otherwise. All right. Don't pay attention. But it's 1873.
Enjoyed in 01.
Again, I want to elaborate on the sheer magnitude of this. Julian Garrett of Macro Strategy Partners in the UK, erudite economist of known many years, has made a calculation that this bubble, this malinvestment is 17 times what we in the era of .com. And what's allied to that, what's really important is the sums involved are so much larger relative to the real economy. The fallout from this could really be much more significant.
For Global Wall Street on this Friday, a real treat. George Noble with us, of course, definitive fidelity with Mr. Lynch. A few years ago at his Noble Capital Advisors, he's been on fire on LinkedIn and Twitter with his criticism of the moment it had. Paul Sweeney with George Noble.
Again, another definitive part in this market was the IPO of a company called SpaceX.
Oh my. Thought you'd never ask.
What do you make of that? I mean, I can't imagine sitting in a Fidelity office conference room and, the bankers bring Elon Musk in to make this pitch. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. What do you make of that?
History shows that buying companies at over 10 times revenues usually ends very badly. We all recall Scott McNeely famously on Sun Microsystems. What happens? What do you have to? What are your returns going to be to buy over 10x? This is 120.
But there's something special about SpaceX. One, there's some defense capability that is really important. Second, they can, by just snapping their finger, bankrupt AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile in a second because of Starlink if they wanted to become a major cell phone carrier. And then not just that, many homes in suburbia or rural could just sync up to their communication system, Starlink, and they're also taking the broadband business. So don't count out SpaceX, right? There's a little bit of, and you have the Elon Musk premium. There's lots of millionaires, I know them, that have made money by riding the wave of Tesla, all right? So you just need to, view SpaceX as a little bit special, right? It's kind of like Apple with Steve Jobs. There was something special about it. It had a secret sauce. It had something special. Now, if something happens to Elon, he becomes incapacitated or dies or whatever, then you're talking about SpaceX going to zero. But he's right that some of these companies that are overvalued, way overvalued when they do their IPO, do poorly post-IPO, and the company either goes under or it takes a long time to actually see the vision come to fruition. SpaceX is a little bit different. And, who knows? SpaceX could easily destroy the telecom competitors. And there would be so many people that would jump in on it. If they just said that, You sign up for Starlink, and you could be we would be the carrier for your cell phone and for your internet connection. There would be a lot of people in the United States jumping in on that, especially if they lower the price. So if you add in your broadband connection plus your cell phone, and you bought into Starlink, and Starlink was cheaper by a substantial amount, 25% or 50%, Elon Musk would take all the business. And they would get lots of cash flow.
Revenues. And, it's even if you look at the company's projection, they're already borrowing money. You look at the company's projection, they'll be cash flow negative for years to come. And here's the worst part of SpaceX, which I don't want to engage in the Captain Obvious thinking, but the thing everyone should consider, and that is the staggered lockup the unlock that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, starting from next month, when the quarterly earnings come out, 20% of the shares come unlocked shortly thereafter. And then there's a whole series of unlocks, 7% every 20 or 30 days. Yeah. By December,
there's going to be a lot of people shorting. I know some people that are in the hedge fund business that they're waiting for this lockout. And boom, they're shorting the stock. So the stock is going to go down. But I said this right before the IPO came out. Wait 3 months, 4 months, and then maybe start accumulating shares and hold it for 10 years. Something special about SpaceX, just like there was something special about Tesla.
Shares will be freely floating. The important point that investors should understand is even without any change in the fundamentals, when you go from a 5% float to 100% float.
But George, in the old days, when you would take a 2-hour lunch at Walkovers and you used to hold court there off the bar. But in the old days, when a company went public, it took its shares public and maybe they had a little stub they kept private. Now we're unloading 5% of the public. To me, it's manipulative. Should regulators step in and get the initial public offering market back to a normal segmentation?
100%. It's not a question of what's legal or illegal. It's just not right. Society is not well served by allowing this. Grandma's 401k is an exit liquidity for this manipulation. And I think the regulators are asleep at the wheel. They only usually jump into action after the car crash has occurred.
Gensler has sat in this chair recently, and I said to Gary Gensler, I said, okay, you let Bitcoin in, I get it, it's a free market and all that. But what do you say to retail that enjoyed BitDog at 110 and it's now down at 60? SpaceX, okay, it's back to 150. I'm watching the debt of SpaceX. To be blunt, it can't find a bid.
And alive to that, Tom, I promise you that once it goes under the offering price and the unlocked shares come to market, the insiders who are in it at 10th of the current price, they're going to hit the bid so fast.
Well, I got to make some news here. To be honest, Fidelity was way out front with Mr. Musk on this. Would you recommend that Abby Johnson and the team sell their SpaceX?
They know the company better than I do. Let's just say if I was handed a portfolio, if Fidelity were to rehire me, I would sell it right away.
Elon Musk, you have to, I'm not sure we've seen anything like this in terms of the value that gets ascribed to Mr. Musk.
This is the reason why. This is the reason why I said don't buy the IPO. Wait for the sell-off. Wait for the sell-off. And then buy. But don't put your whole portfolio in it. Just nibble at it and accumulate shares over time. Because what happens if they merge with Tesla? What happens if they go head-to-head with the telecoms? What happens when Starlink is in every home? There's going to be serious cash flow. And then there's the defense contracting side of it. And you're going to have the robots, the humanoids that are going to be created from Tesla. So don't bet against SpaceX 10 years out. If your event horizon's 10 years, but your entry point, you got to be patient. Just wait and let the sell-off happen. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen will help with your dermal layer for your skin, help with your nails and hair, help with musculature, bone density, and your joint health. Take it every day, super important, and stack this with the vitamin C and magnesium and drink filtered water. That will cross-link with the collagen and help with the dermal layer of your skin. Vitamin D3. Vitamin D3, dual purpose. It'll help with gene expression, help boost up your immune system, help with your cardiovascular system, help with bone density. Super important. And it's really important to take during the winter season, but take it every day. And there are protocols at higher doses with light resistance training. You can remodel your bones to reduce and eliminate osteoarthritis. I've talked about it before. Maybe you should take a look at some of those videos. Resveratrol. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, soaks up free radicals, helps the health of your mitochondria so you have more energy, helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence so your tissues are younger if they can regenerate. And resveratrol is great for your basal layer for your skin. Stacks really well with C60. So when your basal layer is healthier, the new skin cells that are being generated from the basal layer will be improved. Take the resveratrol and the C60 together for max benefit and help with that youthful gene expression, and you're slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store, use discount 5, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
We've seen it for years in Tesla. And you look at the Tesla analysts, the auto analysts all have holds or sells on it, and they've been wrong. And the tech analysts have followed, have all been saying, just buy it, it's Elon, it's autonomous robots and all that kind of stuff. Have you seen that in the past where one?
The probability of me understanding this is 0.
You should AI that with Copilot.
Have you seen that in the past where one individual can have such an influence on valuation?
No, I think Tesla's probably the biggest misallocation of capital at scale in the history of stock markets, perhaps only surpassed by SpaceX. I was one of those wrong analysts. I'm a fossil. I happen to be the auto analyst for Peter Lynch in 1981, who went to Detroit to visit Chrysler, Ford, and GM, so I know of what I speak. Yeah. Fundamental work has not guided one in the case of Tesla. I think, however, though, he's bitten off more than he can chew now. Everyone's speculating whether or not SpaceX may merge, take over Tesla. I have no special insight on that. But if I had to gamble, if I had to speculate, not if I ever speculate, I would say it's a reasonable speculation.
Let me reintroduce here worldwide, including overseas and across America, George Noble with us for years, definitive in the business of overseas investment, and Fidelity Thrill. He's in our studio today. Controversial, to say the least, on the euphoria at hand. Paul Sweeney.
So, George, where do you see opportunity these days? I'm sure you look at various markets, various geographies. Where do you see value these days?
No, it's a market of stocks. As Peter always used to say, don't try to call the market. I think there are outstanding opportunities right now in energy. I'm actually quite concerned about the energy picture. I think we're sleepwalking into the biggest energy dislocation in history. You look at the disparity between the divergence between the financial market for oil and the physical market for oil. We're between a rock and a hard place. The energy stocks, crude has sold off significantly the last few weeks, as have the energy stocks. I think the risk reward is very appealing. There's very little downside and potentially a lot of upside. I like reflation generally speaking. Gold stocks, I think, are a huge buy right here. SSRM as an example, 7 times earnings, not cash flow, 7 times earnings.
Just pay attention. And even Blank Find from Goldman Sachs. He retired from Goldman Sachs. I saw him at an event, right? And he stated to the audience, investing in gold is a waste of your money. You're better off doing a buy and hold strategy in the S&P 500. You'll gain more. Look at it. Just look at the price curves. Look at over the last 10 years or the last 20 years, if you invested $10,000 in gold versus $10,000 in the S&P 500, where would you be at? If it was a hold strategy, this whole gold thing is tactical. If you're a trader and you're doing tactical moves, then it may make sense if you like doing the precious metal stuff. But you can do the same thing in other asset classes like agriculture or energy or tech. So it's nothing unique about or intrinsic about gold. Because if there was an intrinsic value, then the value of gold would have been going up faster than the actual value of the S&P 500. So don't be stupid. This is bullshit. What you just said is total bullshit.
All right. So gold stocks, energy stocks, other commodity names like some of the copper names, they're all very interesting to me.
Part of this AI story, to the extent people are looking for.
Now going into copper, industrial commodity type stuff that has some sort of industrial use, now that's starting to make sense. That would make sense. But these people that are like, I'm just trying to hedge for inflation or something that's going to happen with the economy, and I'm just going to go into gold. No, wrong. All the data says otherwise. All the data says otherwise. It's the wrong play. It's too simplistic. It's almost like caveman thinking. They're going to hedge inflation by buying gold. No, you don't hedge inflation by buying gold. Where do you think the money is going to flow that's being printed by the Federal Reserve? Hot money goes to equities, dumbass.
Other than the chips, has been some of the picks and shovels. One of them has been energy.
Yes.
How are we going to power all these data centers that are being built in everybody's backyard? I mean, are they going to stick little nuclear reactors next to each one? How are we going to do that?
They took thermodynamics.
Exactly.
Well, the one thing you shouldn't do is buy Oklo, which is one of the biggest frauds out there on the market right now. But that's a whole other story. OKLO. We've been short that for a year. The problem with it was some of the names you mentioned, some of the utility stocks. If the AI trade comes unstuck, and I believe it will, I think a lot of those derivative plays are going to take on water. Well, crude's a little different, so it's a slightly different orbit. But a lot of the derivative power plays, I think, are going to have a big problem. One last joke, it was a great line someone used a few weeks ago on me. It was talking about how you got to buy the picks and shovels. I said, yeah, well, what happens if you buy the picks and shovels and there's no gold in them hills?
George, I got to get two things in here that I think our audience is really interested in. And overseas, in the huge ups and some of the challenges you had, Teton as well, are you correlated on overseas to what the dollar does? Like, do you have to have a weak dollar to make overseas work?
No, you don't. But it's a very good question. You don't need a weaker dollar. What you need to keep in mind is the economic cycles across different geographies varies enormously, and that's what you're trying to anticipate. You need to have somewhat of a top-down perspective, not just bottom-up or investing internationally. However, one thing I will say is a dirty secret they don't tell you anymore. Way back when I was a young in the early 80s at Fidelity, there was much less correlation between the markets. Now, given the increasing interlinkages between markets, the correlation is much higher. I like to joke, why do I need to be up at 10 o'clock at night trading the Japanese market, get up at 5 a.m. to watch the London market? I can lose money just as well between 9:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern time, and I can get
I also have on that. And of course, on private credit, I know you've been in the dump known as the St. Regis. The old St. Regis in Beijing was an absolute dump, folks. I'm sitting there in the 90s listening to CDO squared stuff and Banker's Kitty and the whole thing. Are we doing a redux there on private credit and private equity where there's some shadows, to say the least?
You couldn't have said it better. My father always used to like to say there's two ways of learning things, either by precept or by experience. It's much more economical to do it by precept. We're all human. We all think this is brand new. It's deja vu all over again, as Yogi would say.
Exactly. And this is the reason why I was saying that this AI bubble is more like 1873, not .com bubble, because of the financial engineering that's involved. There's this shady environment of the private credit and private equity, ETF, derivative market. So be careful. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It's a very comprehensive compound profile here to help to slow down the aging process. You get all the minerals and vitamins that you need on a daily basis with lots of other supplements within this compound to help to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, boost up your endocrine system so it's working properly, helps with your cardiovascular health, helps with brain function, allows you to improve your concentration and cognition will be faster, your memory will be better. It'll help you to control your blood glucose levels. And when you're working out, do a little bit of like 60-40 split or a 70-30 split, heavier on resistance training, and you're going to get the musculature that you need. You're going to get fit. You're going to be able to control and improve your metabolism, and you're going to have longevity and a steady burn of energy. This is going to speed up your metabolism and give you a steady burn of energy, not crashing, not spikes of energy. It's a steady burn of energy. You'll feel the effects of this within 72 hours when we start taking it. 72 hours, boom. And then you start having more vitality. And then over time, because of the compound effect, you're going to start noticing in the mirror that you're getting fitter and that you're slowing down the aging process. And these different systems are going to be improving for you. So this is a great way to get healthy. And it has the minerals and the multivitamins that you need and the other compounds to help slow down the aging process. Now, take C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. It's almost 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach. You can get an MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or extra virgin olive oil. C60 has to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. I've been doing this for over 10 years, every day. Now what this does is it's going to soak up free radicals. When you soak up free radicals, you're reducing the stress in the tissue, you're reducing the stress in the cell. The cell will perform better, your tissues will perform better, therefore your organ systems will perform better. And you'll have more energy because the mitochondria will be healthier. Because you're soaking up those free radicals, the mitochondria will produce more ATP, so you have more energy. And if you're paying attention here, you're bringing down inflammation, you're soaking up free radicals, and you're boosting up your energy levels. You're reducing all of those vectors of aging. Because with aging, you lose energy. With aging, you increase inflammation. With aging, you're producing more free radicals. So we're reducing the aging process. And there's a compound effect with this. When you soak up those free radicals at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation, so your cardiovascular system works better. Your brain function will improve because you're going to have better positive neuroplasticity where your neurons will link together more efficiently and be more robust. So your thinking will be faster and your memory will be better. And by bringing down inflammation at the brain level and soaking up those free radicals, the neurons are healthier. It's producing more ATP. Therefore, you're reducing amyloidosis. You're reducing misfolded proteins. Your brain will function better. Please go to my store, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day every day. Like I said, I've been doing this for over 10 years every day. Now, you can stack Boomer Boost with the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. That's a great way to stack Boomer Boost. You can stack it with the C60, but I highly recommend to do this protocol. Boomer Boost with the C60, with the turmeric, ashwagandha and lignans, and the Max 35 with the probiotics. And you're attacking all of the vectors to help what you want to do is help slow down the aging process and get healthy. So you're covering all the bases. And if you really think about how your biochemistry works, it's a multitude of pathways with a multitude of intermediates, these different compounds. And they work together in a symphony. There's some positive and negative feedback loops in your biochemistry, but when you apply all this together, you're going to slow down the aging process. This is the reason why stacking supplements gives you a higher efficacy for slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's see here. All right, let's listen to MS now about how ridiculous Trump is.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform.
Let's get down to business. This week, the Trump administration held public hearings on its latest round of proposed tariffs that could be as high as 12.5%. It comes as a new report from the New York Federal Reserve finds that nearly half of the companies in its region paying tariffs are planning to raise more prices. Joining me now to discuss, my dear old friend Bill Cohen, founding partner at Puck and a former Wall Street banker, and someone you absolutely should be following. He is a smarty pants. Scott Lincicome, Vice President of General Economics at the Cato Institute. Scott, these new tariffs the administration is considering are the president's attempt to make up for what he will.
Let me just interject right now. So the natural gas futures are trading at 2.898. So it's been trying to break through that 9 level. It went up to about 2.91 and then dropped back down. So now as we're getting closer to the end of the day, once we get closer to 2 o'clock, this is probably just going to hum along flat, maybe drift a little bit lower, a little bit higher, but it's going to probably not do too much price action. The question is, what happens on the weekend? Will it go up? Will natural gas go up or not? It fell a lot the last 3 days. So chances are you should have an up candle on Monday. The probability of an up candle is probably pretty high. In addition, if there's some sort of military excursion that's happening in the Middle East, it probably will drive up natural gas too. So it's still testing right now as I'm talking. It's now at 2.904. So it's bouncing around. It's trying to find what's happening is that it's interesting because what's happening is that the bulls and the bears are fighting each other at the 2.9 mark right now in the future market for natural gas. Everyone's saying, okay, 2.9 is going to be the line in the sand, but who's going to win out? Now, seasonally, it should go down, but it's fell a lot in the last 3 days, so it probably needs to retrace a little bit. Okay, let's continue.
After the Supreme Court struck down his original ones, what's going to happen here?
Well, I think it's all but certain that those tariffs are going to go into place because Secretary Bessent and Donald Trump himself and others have already said that the tariffs are going to go into place. And while that's legally questionable, I think as a simple economic matter, we should expect those tariffs to hit in July when the temporary tariffs that they already imposed back in February to replace the emergency tariffs, when those expire, we'll get these other tariffs.
Why does this make sense, Bill? Right? Our focus over the last few weeks have been on gas prices because of the war in Iran. Now those prices are going back up. Now you're going to bring tariffs back in the game. Affordability is the #1 issue for a lion's share of the American voting public. Why are we doing this?
Stephanie, you're asking me why we're doing something that is absolutely ridiculous and stupid economically? I can't answer that. Stephanie, I can tell you that the Supreme Court struck down his tariffs the first time around. I can tell you that tariffs are a tax on the American consumer and not a small one. I can tell you that they are hurting people in their pocketbooks, especially at places like Walmart, where many people shop, where many of the goods that are sold are imported foreign goods. I don't understand it. I don't understand the philosophy. I never have. I don't think it's wise economics. It's not wise politics. And yet the guy just keeps doubling and tripling down on everything. So no, I can't answer that, Stephanie.
Okay, but despite all of this, though, markets continue to soar. It's largely driven by AI. What is your take, Scott, on sort of this bifurcation, right? We always say the markets are different from the economy, but this time seems really different. It almost seems like the markets are divorced from the lion's share of the economic reality.
Yeah, well, you first have to start with the macro and remember that For all the problems these tariffs raise, the United States is a services economy. Trade as a share of our overall economic output is some of the lowest in the world. So you can do a lot of damage on tariffs, and that'll hurt companies and consumers, but it won't dramatically affect the kind of macro picture. But the other thing is that, like you mentioned, AI is this massive tailwind for economic growth and for markets. And importantly, everything you need to build a data center or to power AI is exempt from all of these tariffs. So it's a dirty little secret of the Trump tariff regime is that today what's powering the economy is doing so through free trade, not because of tariffs.
This is a good point. At the same time, there's this new report out there. Notice has a story that the Treasury Department has a draft report that is warning about a possible AI bubble very similar to the dot-com bubble that took place in the early 2000s. But this time, AI is even more embedded in the economy. It's even more tied to our government.
It's 1873. It's not dot-com. It's worse than dot-com.
At this point, how much worry should we have, though?
Look, I mean, Stephanie, we've seen this before. We saw it with the Internet 1.0. We saw it with the emerging telecom companies that built the infrastructure to power the internet. All of which companies, by the way, you'll remember, went bankrupt. And of course, the interesting thing is, of course, we still use that infrastructure, and it's important infrastructure. So I suspect, as others have said, that something like that will happen again. The
same thing happened with the railroads. 1873. Same thing. Same thing.
Companies are astronomical and way too high. And you can see it to some extent in SpaceX, which, no pun, is coming back to Earth a little bit after a huge hype fest. And so I think that the infrastructure that's being built is very important and will end up being useful. But what are the companies going to look like that are building this infrastructure? And are some of them going to go bankrupt? And are investors going to get end up with the short end of the stick here?
Could the market be ahead of itself? All right, one more topic before you gentlemen go. Scott, Trump just a couple of moments ago on social media renewed the same sentiment, saying he will not sign the bipartisan affordable housing bill. That doesn't stop it from becoming law. At midnight, home prices are at an all-time high. We've got a viewer question on this. Jared from Wisconsin is asking us, what does the housing bill do for a current homeowner? I feel like this thing was not promoted very well.
Well, for a current homeowner, I don't really think there's that much in there. What this is really about is freeing up construction of new homes, making it easier to build, for example, manufactured housing. There's some stuff in there on housing subsidies and the rest, but that's mainly for home buyers, not for homeowners. So, I like the stuff on manufactured housing. I think there's some other stuff in there that's a little questionable, but I really don't see much effect. I don't think you're going to wake up next week and suddenly your mortgage is going to be a little better or something like that.
Is rising in its first day of trading in the U.S. The listing less than an hour old, and we'll dive into the memory maker's new listing here with Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow, who's going to join us from the NASDAQ market site a short time from now. And as Maine tries to set rules for a shotgun Democratic primary convention, we'll get analysis from our political panel. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano are with us. It's Friday, and we've got Charlie Pellet at the helm. Let's turn to the markets first. World headquarters in New York. Hey, Charlie, happy Friday.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe Matthew. Lots to keep an eye on today. Oil, but obviously the big story. SK Hynix, we are up. We are trading up 17.8%. We'll keep you updated throughout the day. Of course, our Ed Ludlow will have a whole lot more on SK Hynix coming up in just a moment. To the equity market, though, a rally that has driven stocks to within striking distance of a record is wavering ahead of earnings season next week. Bank earnings front and center. What a Tuesday it is shaping up to be. 5 out of the 6 biggest banks in the country will be reporting on Tuesday morning. S&P right now up 13, 75.56, where we stand up by about 0.2%. We've got the Dow up 87, now up by about 0.2%. NASDAQ Composite Index up 18 for NASDAQ. That is a gain of just about 0.1%. The stocks are retreating somewhat today. The Philadelphia Stock Exchange Semiconductor Index is down by about 0.1%. 10-year 4.55% with a 2-year 4.19%. Gold 41.10 the ounce, down 0.3%. Crude has been wavering, down 1%, 71.37 a barrel on WTI. The big story, though, Wall Street squarely focused on the first day of trading for South Korean memory chip maker SK Hynix's ADRs. Sri Natarajan is chief Wall Street correspondent for Bloomberg News, and he says there are big implications for banks.
This is SK Hynix Day. Think about anyone with a view of Midtown Manhattan last night and you saw the JP Morgan building lit up with the Korean flag. Like, they raised $26.5 billion, and yet they barely make the podium finish in terms of equity raises in the last month. We've had Google that came in and raised $40 billion. You had SpaceX with $86 billion. Google again with another $40-odd billion over the next few months.
Bloomberg Sri Natarajan. The ADRs trading under the ticker SKHYB. Right now, they are up by 17.2%. Monday, by the way, that ticker changes to SKHY. Again, recapping here, S&P up 13, up 0.2%. SK Hynix, the ADR is up 17.2%. Lots going on. That, Joe Matthew, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, you said it. Yeah, it's a big day in the markets. SK is live, as you just heard from Charlie Pellet, our good friend in New York. We'll be back in about 15 minutes with more on the Friday trade here as we really zero in on not just this stock, but the memory space and the AI trade as a whole. We're going to get to what's happening at the White House and what may not be happening with Iran in just a moment. But we want to seize on the moment here, having just gotten this great setup from Charlie Pellet, because Ed Ludlow is actually at the NASDAQ market site today. They flew him across the country for this because it's a pretty big deal. SK, of course, is a very small group of companies that make memory chips. And we've talked so much on the program about the shortages prompted by the massive development of data centers, the AI race. This is what it's all about. And if you've been hearing us talk about Micron technology, which has been to the moon, parabola, it's coming down to earth more recently. In fact, it's quite a ways off its all-time high above $1,200. In fact, Micron at the moment is down $17, almost 2% here, $974. Maybe investors are harvesting Micron gains to get into the SK trade. We're also seeing, by the way, SanDisk, also in the family, rise 1%, and Samsung up almost 1.5%. Let's get to this important listing with Ed, because he's in the belly of the beast. Of course, the co-host of Bloomberg Tech with us live from the NASDAQ. Ed, it's so far so good for SK. Can we assume that there's so much built-in demand for these products that there will be built-in demand for the stock?
It's almost as linear as that. I mean, there is demand for SK, right? You guys absolutely nailed it in the intro, that it's a very small group of companies that do memory, in part because of the historic economics being brutal. But actually, Joe Matthew, are we live on YouTube right now as well as radio?
You said it. Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to hold this up for the YouTube audience. This is a HBM4E, right? It's about the size of my fingernail. It is 12 layers of DRAM, and SK Hynix has 57% of that market. Okay, so memory more broadly, HBM is a few single percentage points in terms of where that DRAM goes, but on a dollar basis, many, many more percentage points to the market because it's so expensive right now. And you've kind of tied all the themes together. The investor attitude towards this was like, look, we want to get some American exposure to SK.
Yeah. Isn't that something? I could hardly see it. He held it right up to the camera, which gives us a sense of
get in trouble.
The micro technology that we're talking about. Are they harvesting Micron to buy SK, or is that just
I think that's interesting. You know, one of the rationales that for SK doing ADRs was they have 57% market share to high bandwidth memory, HBM specifically. But they feel a bit like maybe they trade at a discount. There's a premium that gets assigned to Micron and Samsung in terms of valuation. So from the SK side, that's certainly true. in the memory game, all of rising tides, etc. All of those memory names benefits. In terms of the harvesting, it's possible, but they're all in the same position right now with a very tight supply market.
Then again, NVIDIA's moving higher, and that's usually what they seem to sell first to buy anything. And give us a sense of where we go from here. We were told this listing was, I believe, 7 times oversubscribed. Not all of the investors got the shares they were promised. Does that ensure a steady climb for the first couple of days here? What should we expect?
Well, I heard the soundbite you guys played in the news bell from Shri on what's happening in equity markets right now. The way of looking at it is not 7 times oversubscribed. It was that there was almost $200 billion of demand for a $26.5 billion deal. Look at it that way. So clearly there's appetite. The main headline from the interview, the red headline on the Bloomberg terminal, was that SK has a much, 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 much bigger US investment plan than they've disclosed so far. So they've said they'd invest $35 billion here. And when I asked him about the chairman of SK Group, Che, about his relationship with the Trump administration, he was like, all you need to know is I have a much, much, much bigger number. I'm not going to disclose it yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, they'll be popping up on the Oval before you know it. You did speak with the chairman, who you just mentioned, Che Taiwan, about the growing demand that this company anticipates, and let's let everyone listen to what he said.
Sure. I have some confidence that the demand will be grow, and our supply capacity never going to catch up. It's going to be until that our society, human society, has set about some settlement with AGI. Then, I guess that there's a kind of normalize at all the cycles. But anyhow, that until then, we need that a lot of memories.
Just a minute left, Ed Lobo. Are we in a space now where memory is no longer seen by the street as a cyclical business?
He didn't really explicitly say that because supply is still so tight. What he was saying was, I was trying to get him to give a date. His peers are saying that the memory supply will improve. The tightness will ease 2028. I was trying to get him to say 2030, 2032. But his point is, when we hit AGI, that's when it will happen. So mark it on your calendars, guys. Artificial general intelligence is now the new yardstick for supply metrics improving.
Incredible. There's a big party down there today. They must be pretty excited, right? This is a big one.
Massive delegation from South Korea, really important for the NASDAQ. Again, intense US American investor interest in this one.
Well, I'm really delighted you could join us from the NASDAQ market site. Our good friend Ed Ludlow, the singular host of Bloomberg Tech. That sometimes it just comes out the wrong way. I'll tell you what, Alibaba, remember, that was the biggest of all time in 2014. That was a $25 billion listing. This one is $26.5 billion. Just one of the stories we're following here in the news shop at Balance of Power. We've got our eyes on Iran and the president as well. My goodness, he's been saying a lot here. And just on Truth Social a short time ago, the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue talks. We have agreed to do so, he says, suggesting we're not done with diplomacy. But the U.S. has stated to them in no uncertain terms, the ceasefire is over, exclamation point. Tyler Kendall is on this for us as our Washington correspondent. Tyler, is that any different than what he said at NATO? It's kind of the same. It was open to talks there and the ceasefire was over.
Yeah, essentially. Although I guess this does perhaps tamp down some of those fears that we could be headed towards some more significant military escalation. He's putting it in writing that he will be open to the talks continuing. Our own reporting had confirmed overnight that they're continuing on at least the technical level. We should say the context here going into this week. We knew that they were expected to slow down to some extent, considering Iran held days of funeral rites for the former supreme leader who was buried yesterday. But this type of escalation that we saw really marked the worst flare-up in fighting since the Memorandum of Understanding was signed. But what feels very different sitting here today on Friday is that this week saw the end of that waiver when it comes to allowing Iran to sell its crude to market. Our analysts at Bloomberg Economics say this is just following a, quote, familiar pattern. Both sides are trying to get more leverage when they go to the negotiating table. But when it comes to the oil, when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, that still remains the largest sticking point, which is what the ceasefire was supposed to be all about.
So it sounds like more of the same. We're going to the weekend without a real change here, and we'll see if there's more fire involved. There will be no signing of the bill. This was the first story I was going to ask Tyler about until that most recent post. The bipartisan housing bill sitting on the president's desk, and I don't think this was in Schoolhouse Rock, was it? That if the president doesn't sign it for 10 days, it becomes law on its own. Apparently that's going to happen. He says he will not sign it, quote, in protest over the fact the U.S. Senate is not capable of passing the Save America Act, which he says is polling at 97% with the Republican Party. The president, Tyler, is punishing his own party?
I'm going to let a political strategist weigh in on the calculus here, considering that this was a bipartisan bill that Republicans want to campaign on as we get closer to November. That is certainly going to raise questions in the president's view. According to his post, if we take him at his words, he feels that the Save America Act will be perhaps more beneficial to his efforts towards November, I think is fair to say what we can take from this. But if we tie these two stories together, we know that there has been mounting dismay with how the president has been handling the economy as those impacts get compounded by the war. We had a new poll out from the Financial Times released overnight that shows 58% of voters say that they do not believe that the costs from the Iran war are worth it. So it comes at very interesting timing here that we have the president essentially saying that the housing bill is, quote, fine, but that he's not going to actually put pen to paper, and we're going to see that signature on it.
He really called it a big yawn, I think, the last time you guys asked him about it over there. Tyler, thank you so much. Tyler Kendall with us here in our Washington bureau. Is that true? Elon Musk postponed the interview over on Brand X? I mean, that's great, and I don't blame him going up against the elephant here on Balance of Power. But I still got Tom Keene to deal with. Did you hear they sick Tom Keene on me on it?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. They're at different price points and different parts per million. But take a teaspoon of this a day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and swallow it. What this will do is boost up your innate immune system. It will neutralize because it has structural nanosilver. It'll improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. Super important to boost up that innate immune system. Do this every day. I've been doing this for over 6 years every day. Now what I do is I stack it. I take the Max 35 every day in the morning, and I also take the C60, the lignans, the turmeric and ashwagandha, the boomer boost, and the probiotics. That's the core to slow down the aging process. Now I take the other supplements to stack on top of that. So if you want to do exactly what I'm doing, you want to take the collagen and the gladiator barley, right, and the omega-3. So, but the thing is that the core protocol is the Max 35 or Cleanse or Max 14, depending on your ability for affordability. The Boomer Boost, C60, the lignans, the turmeric and the ashwagandha root, and the probiotics. It's a very powerful stack to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, get the Max 35, Max 14, or Cleanse. Take it every day, a teaspoon a day. Swish in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds, and swallow. And I've been doing this for over 6 years. And what you'll notice is that if you stack it with the C60, you'll also notice that you'll be able to breathe a little bit better, because what's happening is you're reducing inflammation and you're allowing for your bronchial tubes to actually relax. And what happens is your bronchial tubes will actually expand and allow for better breathing. All right, let's go to Government action is critical for AI entrepreneurs.
Equity indices built on opinions? That's the old way. The new way is Bloomberg Equity Indices, built using transparent, rules-based methods.
I think it's alive and well. I think what we've built here in America in terms of the American dream still is a beacon for entrepreneurs all over the world. You can see it today, raising $29 billion, as Paul and I were just talking about, that it's still alive and well. But at the same time, that diaspora of opportunity is all over the world. And so that goes for us here in the US as well, is to make sure that we're not passing it by just because we're not familiar with it, just because we don't know too much about that particular country. Opportunity is all around the world, especially how much AI has democratized access to these markets.
Talk to us about AI and how you believe it may impact the workforce. I happen to be in a camp, I hope I'm wrong, that it's going to be a net destroyer of jobs. A lot of folks are telling me you're too short term, don't think longer term. Longer term is tomorrow for me. But how do you think about it?
Well, can't both things be true?
Maybe,
right?
I guess.
Right. I feel like in the short run, will it be a net destroyer of jobs? I'm in that camp. I do think many, many jobs, many white collar jobs are going to go away. When you think about the automation, and we think of not just the state of the art, because oftentimes we look at what's the state of the art, but we forget the velocity of the art and how much it's come, how far it's come in 3 years.
Let's think about this. If there's going to be aggregate demand destruction in purchasing goods and services in terms of the demand for human labor, and people have mortgages, how are those mortgages going to get paid? The banks are going to suffer. There's going to be a feedback loop. It's going to be very bad for the economy. This idea is just going to eliminate white-collar jobs in the short term. That's such a parochial textbook answer and just low-level understanding. What about the secondary and tertiary effects? If people have mortgages and a big part of the workforce no longer works, how are they going to get paid? The banks are going to have a problem. So the banks are funding all this AI stuff. They're underwriting the IPOs. They're making a ton of cash. They may be underwriting debt for these companies. And then all of a sudden, the job market starts to falter. People don't get hired. And people start to default on their mortgages. And then the banks are starting to ask for the government and the Federal Reserve to bail them out. It's going to be a big problem. Big problem. Aggregate demand is going to shift down. It's not just about destruction of white-collar jobs. It's a destruction of people's ability to pay the debt that has been issued from the banks.
Let alone 6, 9, 10 years in the future. I think short term, there's going to be a lot of disruption. Long term, though, when you look at most technologies, I think there's going to be growth.
Yeah, that's what they tell us. Pelgo, talk to us about what you guys are doing at Pelgo, your company.
So if you believe that that's true, if you believe that there's going to be folks displaced, you look at kind of the steel industry in America, right? You can go to those towns and say, overall, all this kind of the white collarization of the workforce in the U.S. has been a net benefit for the U.S. But you go to the steel belt and you get on in a town square there and you tell them that, I don't think you're going to make a lot of friends.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to happen with AI. And I think what's happening is that the U.S., like how our society behaves, how our government behaves, we don't have great safety nets for folks. And so when you get displaced by AI,
So you're going to get displaced by AI, and then the government is going to come in and it's a welfare state now. Well, wait a minute, doesn't that sound like England? This AI is fucking bullshit.
Anywhere else in the world where you have a big safety net, you can figure things out, you can retrain. We don't have that safety net. So Pelgo, what we do is we go to the companies and say, hey, there are resources these folks really need. And if you're displacing them, or even if they're leaving voluntarily, there's things that are owed to them, including outplacement, including a safety net. And that's actually who pays for our service.
I have Edward Wong's fabulous Chinese book at my coffee table. It's my next book to get to. And I just want you to discuss the threat of China in AI, in EV, Volkswagen, Michael Barr telling us about not collapse, that's too strong, but the industrial, broader technological threat of China, is it legitimate?
It's a hard question to answer. I think when you look at the entrepreneurs themselves, I think most folks are there to build the technology because they like the technology and they see opportunity. But AI is such a powerful market-making and maybe world-making and world-shifting technology that governments invariably need to get involved. And when that happens, it's very hard to say.
So let me speak as an American. Their government is playing with a stacked deck and they're crushing us short-term on price, a la EV. They're flooding the world. Units, be damned to price. How do we compete?
It's hard. You have to hold them to task with the international regulations, the framework in which we've built the international kind of trade order on. With that said, I think if you're the US government, you have to think about how do we support the entrepreneurs? How do we make sure we don't lose in this race? And I'm not saying that because I'm this kind of person that thinks there's going to be this AI utopia, but I fundamentally believe that this is going to be as important, if not more important, than the internet. And if we were not the leaders of the internet over the last 30 years, take a look at what our economy would have become in that timeline. And so there has to be a certain amount of support and ability for us to compete on the world stage.
Where do you think we are right now vis-a-vis AI, the development, the support, the implementation?
Oh, I love that question because I actually think we're probably in the equivalent of 2099. Things feel a bit frothy. People are starting to say, I don't know if this AI thing is going to be real. Think about 99, 2000. People said the same thing. In 01,
AI is going to be
like
real.
the internet. But yet 20 years later, almost everything.
AI is going to be super real. The thing is that we're messing around with nitroglycerin and it's going to blow up the economy because people have to work to pay for their life. So people go, well, just give them, some sort of dividend from AI, just give them social welfare. Eventually people will lose in the long run because the society is less productive. There's going to be laziness that sets in, addiction will increase, problems with people's health. There's going to be emotional instability that takes place in the society. There's going to be more crime. All these bad things are going to happen. On top of people defaulting on their debt. Companies are going to default on their company loans. People are going to default on their mortgages and their car loans. When most of the society can be supplanted by AI, how do you finance the debt at the individual level? And how do you finance the government debt? That's in trillion, 40 trillion? I stopped counting. $40 trillion in debt? Who's going to pay for it? There would have to be a massive debt forgiveness program that takes place. So we take a look at this microcosm that's going on with student debt. It's around $1.5 trillion. Now, if individuals can't find jobs to pay for that debt, they default on that debt. Now that's a microcosm. Now just imagine most of the labor force not being able to find work. And think about all of the debt that's out there in terms of mortgages, car loans, yada, yada, credit card debt, all this stuff. And you're talking a magnitude of probably $100 trillion or more. AI is going to blow up the economy if this is titrated too fast. If this is not regulated, if it's not modulated in how it's implemented in the economy, it will blow up capitalism.
Was promised actually became true. So I think we're in a similar stage of AI development.
Are you moving to Texas or Florida?
Oh, I actually was posed that question recently. So, we incorporated in Delaware. Should have taken a closer look at Texas. Maybe we will. It's good that there's competition out there, not just in Delaware.
AI is going to affect the economy, but no one knows really for sure how bad it's going to be. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nail silver toothpaste. This has no fluoride. It will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation, help the health of your gum line, and with good oral hygiene, you're going to also help with your cardiovascular health and valvular health. Super important. Again, this has structural nail silver. It'll help to neutralize. And get the structural nail silver gels. I have it in the tube form or the quick dispenser form called Renew. Use them the same way. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. They'll help to heal it quicker, about a third of the time quicker. And during the allergy season or the cold season, lightly coat your nostrils, put it on your hands. It stays active for 5.5 hours. And it'll help to neutralize because that's the structural nail silver. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Please subscribe to my channels. I have YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. If you want to help support the work that I do, get the great products that I offer, get healthy, follow my lead. I'm telling you how to make money in the market, how to take a look at some of these tumultuous times and give you a unique perspective, and how to get healthy. So please help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free. Get the great products. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.